Hey everybody, how you doing? Jam Creates here. Getting ready to do this live stream. Waiting for Pete. We're gonna get going. Peter Simeti is gonna drop in. We're gonna talk all about Alterna. But until Pete gets here, I am Jam Creates. If you are new to the channel, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're not new to the channel, well, welcome back. I'm happy to have everybody here. Let me know if the mic is like way too hot. I got a brand new mic and I'm trying it out. So if it's anything funky with the sound, let me know and I will be happy to make adjustments. Um, anyway, while we wait for Pete to get in, I might as well mention, if you don't know anything about me, my channel is focused mostly on indie and crowd-funded comics. And to that end, you can always follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram. Instagram, I mostly just post pictures of my dog and my artwork. And I've got a cool project that's coming starting in September. You guys are in for a treat because it's really shaping up to be really good. And that is going to be called Indie Comics Underground. It's going to be a free online fanzine that focuses solely on independent and crowd-funded comics. So if you're into indie comics, if you're into crowd-funded comics, whether it's Indiegogo or self-published or anything like that, absolutely be sure it's in the description. It should be in the description. Definitely sign up for the mailing list, and you're going to get the issues of Indie Comics Underground ICU. You're going to get it delivered directly to your email box. So you don't even have to do anything. It's just going to come to you. And you're going to get it before anyone else does, because I am going to post it online eventually, but anyone who's signed up for the mailing list is going to get it directly first before it gets posted online anywhere else. So that's Indie Comics Underground. It's coming up. The first issue will be in September. Thinking the first week in September. And it's going to have some cool stuff. I've got some really cool people lined up to do some stuff in there. And I see Pete is in the waiting room. Let's add him in. Hello, Pete. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Sorry about being late.
No, it's all good. Gave me a chance to pimp my fanzine that I'm doing.
Cool.
We got some people in the chat. That's awesome.
Great. Hey, everybody.
Some familiar faces, some new faces. That's awesome. So,
all right, I'll put the link out there too.
Excellent. Yeah, I tried spreading it around if we could get the word out. And you guys should see in the description, and the link should be in the description for the Indiegogo for Alterna 2, which Pete is here to talk about.
Yep.
Pete, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, Pete.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And you've been a really cool supporter of mine from the beginning. You've popped into some of my chats before. You've tweeted out and retweeted my reviews and all that kind of stuff. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. I'm glad you're enjoying the books, if anything.
Appreciate absolutely. That. Yeah, no, I definitely. It's really funny because I've become like a I don't know what you want to call it, but like I go out there and I proselytize Alterna to like everybody I know who reads comics.
A lot of people, they, it's the kind of thing, I guess you try one and then you're like, oh, this is interesting. You don't know what to make of it. And then you try another and you're like, okay, this was kind of good too. And then you try a third and a fourth and it turns into like, okay, wow, these are all pretty good. And that's in with a lot of people. So I guess you're not alone there.
No, it's true. It's funny because everybody I know who does pick up Alterna books, they start like you said, they'll read a couple, they'll be like, what is this book? It's only $1.50. Yeah, I'll give it a shot. And then all of a sudden they're buying everything. And that's what I did.
Yeah. It usually takes the third or fourth book to really commit it to reality. Even at a convention, we still get people, they'll come back, they'll buy books, especially if it's a multiple day show. So they'll buy a book or two the first day. And first of all, none of them believe that the prices are real. They go, are you sure that doesn't make... I'm like, it's on newsprint. They're all brand new. That's why they're able to be so affordable. So they buy one or two, and then they come back the second day, and they buy 4 or 5, And then they come back the third day and they're leaving with a stack of like 10 to 15.
Well, that's, you know what? It's funny because that's kind of like, I mean, I didn't do it at a show, but that's kind of how it worked for me. Like I picked up a couple. I went into my local store. I picked up a couple of things, and then they didn't have a lot, but what I grabbed what I could. And then actually at New York City Comic Con, I saw Robert Geronimo at his table, and I picked up the first issue of Blood Realm. And then at that point, I was completely sold. And then like I just ended up like, it was right around, you know, like that's in October, and then like coming in towards the holidays, I saw the subscription for the, you know, the everything for 2019, and I was like, yeah, this is what I want for Christmas.
So do you have a first printing then of Blood Realm #1?
I do, and it's
Alterna logo.
Yep, and it's autographed.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I didn't have mine. I had to give all mine away because we sold out so quick. So I was like, I have to sell even my own copy. But then I found a shop that still had 3, and so I just rebought them from the shop.
That's pretty funny. That's a good sign, though, if you have to actually go back out and buy your own product.
Yeah. I gave it a week because they had sold out of a bunch of them. They had bought like 20, and then I gave it a week. And I was like, okay, I'll have to calm down. I'll let a customer get that in case. And then one of them sold. They had 4 at the time, and then one of them sold. And then I went back, and I was like, all right, I gave it the week. I'm buying the rest. That's it.
That's so funny. And you know, it's funny. I'm seeing some faces in the chat that I see in some of your chats usually, like Ara saying hi, Alterna. You know,
hey, Ara, hey, Liberty Bell, Simonon, yeah, all these guys. You guys are great. Sean, hey.
So anyway, you are here ostensibly to talk about Alternaween 2. That was really the point. For anybody who doesn't know Alternaween, well, I should probably let you do the pitch.
I like what Sean had to say. He goes, Peter, you can just print more. We did print more. I've got second and third printings. I wanted a first printing. But you know, and the thing is, we're in comics, right? I need something to retire on one day.
Yes.
It's not going to be a pension plan. It's going to be comic books. So,
well, I was going to say, and honestly, when it comes to Blood Realm, like I see like a fervor for that comic, really from like a lot of people. Just it hit with a lot of people that I've seen at least, and it just really seems to have caught. I mean, it did with me too. I love that book, and like I am just chomping at the bit for the next series now because I read issue 3. I didn't post my review yet of volume 2, issue 3, but I will. And you know, I can't wait to just see where this thing is going.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's great. That's the thing too. And Rob told me because he sent in the submission, and I thought it looked awesome, but it was different. It was really different. But I thought, you know, it's really good, and well, let's see what his plans are for the future. So he told me the outline that he had for the whole story, and then especially how it ends. And I said, okay, we gotta sign this on because the ending is phenomenal, and the rest of it, every single arc was so great, and I love the epic story that he's telling, and he's all about it. He's all about it. So I'm looking forward to the next volume as well. I've had him on my show. I've talked to him a whole bunch of times, and he's always kind of nervous about, you know, I don't know if you want to do more. And I was like, I want to do as many as you want to do. You know, if you want to do 20 volumes of Blood Realm for the next 30 years, let's do it. You know, and even if we only have 20 or 30 readers at that point, I'm looking forward to it. So it's like you have to keep making them, Rob, if you want. You know, as long as he wants to, there's always a home for him at Alterna with Blood Realm or anything else that he wants to put out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next volume, and especially the Giants of volume 1 and 2 coming out. They got some great covers for those.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing that you guys are doing too. Just it's another way to get these books in people's hands, and it's all in one shot, and it's not a fortune to get a hold of it either. And that's one of the things you guys do that I love. And I tell everybody, and like you said, people just don't believe it when I tell them how much the books cost. Like they always
they think there's a catch. They think they're loss leaders. You know, maybe number 1 is $1.50, and then 3, 4, whatever number 2 is. Those are $5 a piece. No, it's. I know it takes getting used to. I know that's what the comic industry has done to all of us. It's eroded away our trust. We're always looking for, well, where's the where's the downside to this? Where is that that all of a sudden the gotcha moment, you
Right.
know? And there is no gotcha moment with Alterna.
No, and that's the thing. If you want to talk more about the Giants, if for people who don't know, the Alterna Giants thing, I think is a great idea.
Yeah. So with the Giants, they're all going to be at least 80 pages, and it's a self-contained story. It's an issue. It's not going to be perfect bound or anything like that. It's still going to be on newsprint. It's basically a no-frills graphic novel. So instead of having a lot of like pinups and sketchbooks and a gallery thing and, you know, all this kind of back matter, it's just the story. So let's say the Blood Realm Volume 1 Giant coming out in December. That's going to be Volume 1, Issues 1 through 3, that entire story. So I know a lot of Giants nowadays, they still get put out, but it's like a hodgepodge of stories. You know, they kind of center maybe around a character or whatever. And there's no real rhyme or reason other than that. This is a whole arc, and it's going to be a $4.99 book. And we're going to have ones that are 80 pages. We're going to have ones that are 96, over 100. It's going to still be $4.99.
That's awesome. That really is, because they're still printed on newsprint, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so they're printed on newsprint, so the price is able to stay low. So anybody who wants the story can still get the story without having to spend a ton on a bunch of stuff or even like the glossy paper or whatever it might be that they maybe don't really care about. They just want the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is too, is that for subscribers like yourself, you know, I'm guessing and hoping you're subscribing for 2020. But
I will be.
so that's great. So for 2020, for the subscriptions, because we're putting these out, November is going to see the first Giant come out, and that's the Mighty Mascots Giant. Then December will be Blood Realm. Now we have a bunch of people right now going, hey, where can I get these on our subscription? You know, I don't want to pay extra shipping. So for everyone who's interested, and that's going to be starting in November this year, for all the subscribers that are interested, we're going to give you guys a code you can use to get free shipping when you place orders. And you can use that code whenever you choose. It doesn't expire. And you can get whatever you want at the Alterna store. The only caveat is that it's going to ship with your next bundle of books. So if you want the Giants and they're not a part of the subscription plan, because we don't want to force people to like rebuy the same thing.
Right.
You know, so if you already have all the issues, I don't want you to get the Giants on your subscription plan and go, well, you know, I don't really want the Giant, but some people really do. So we want to have that option where you can still get it and the shipping's free. It's just going to be tacked on to your next bundle for next month. So this way you can go in there and go, okay, well, I want the Blood Realm Giant. Maybe I don't want like this other Giant or whatever it is, but you can still get that and still have it a part of your subscription in a way.
Right.
But you've got the plan that gives you that free shipping code.
That's cool. And honestly, as you know, as somebody who is a subscriber, like I find myself, it's funny because I find myself sometimes wanting to give away my books just to share them with people, especially certain, but then like some of them, I'm so attached to them, I don't want to give them away. So like, you know, something like I said, I have the first issue of Blood Realm autographed. I don't really want to give that away, but like I would love to share Blood Realm with more people. So picking up the Giant and just handing it to a friend of mine who I'm like, dude, I know you're going to like this. Like that's a great way to do that, just to share the love to everybody out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with Blood Realm, one day Rob wants to compile the whole thing into this big tome of Blood Realm.
Oh, wow.
So, so he didn't want to just, you know, every single volume turned into a trade or whatever it is. So I thought that this would be really great, especially for him and a couple other creators too. This way they can still get all those stories out there again. And that even for them at a show or whatever, they can sell the compilation then for $5 a piece. And along with people who want to get the single issues too, whether or not it's to fill a gap in a collection or just you prefer to get the single issues, or heck, you could get the single issues and you can get the Blood Realm or whatever it is Giant. And it's always going to be a different art on the cover. So this way, even if you view it as just it's something that has this new art on it and you want it and you really love that series, let's say,
right,
that's something that you could do. So at least you have that option. So it's not so much as forcing people to purchase something again as it is just giving people an option. And especially for comic shops too, we're finding that they'll sell out of a lot of titles, a lot of issues, and they can't get them back in. So some of them they'll order directly through us, but some of them they just want to get everything in one shot, or they feel like, oh, we missed the boat. If you guys do a graphic novel version, we'll get these. Well, the giants are a really great way for shops to get something in there, because the other problem that we're having with shops is that we're finding that a lot of them don't want to put the $1.50 books on the rack because they don't want to make the other books look bad. So they feel like, I'm going to get customers that are going to complain and go, well, this was really good and it was $1.50. Why am I paying $5 for this other book that wasn't as good? And they don't want to have to answer that. I don't want them to answer those questions.
Right.
So instead, what they could do is sell the giants, and then it goes, the customer goes, okay, $4.99. Okay, yeah, it's thicker and everything, but it's still the same price point. So that's not really going to become a concern. Maybe one day it becomes a concern as to why aren't the other ones as thick? But that's a conversation, I guess, for a different day.
Right. And I mean, you know what? And honestly, if you're making the other guys look bad, that's their problem, not yours. So
yeah. I go, okay, I guess so. But all right, let's see what we could do. And it works for us because we do have the graphic novels that are like $10, $15. And then we've got the single issues that are like $1.50. Some of them 99 cents and some of them are $1.99. But this $5 price point is a good solid price point.
Yeah, it's really funny because, like I said, people don't, and you said it too, like people don't believe the $1.50 when they see it. And I was the same thing. I was kind of like, this is kind of weird. But then like the craziest thing happens. I know it's for me. I'm sure it's for a lot of people who follow Alterna and really like the books. The weirdest thing happens. You pick up the book and you're like, all right, I'll give this a shot. It's $1.50. And then you start reading it and this weird thing happens, at least for me. I mean, I'm 44 years old. I'm not little. So like for me, like I remember buying newsprint books back in the day. So this strange thing happens of you open it and then you feel the newsprint and you smell the newsprint. And it's like this weird feeling of just like, yes, this is a comic book. Like, this is what I want.
Yeah. And the thing is too, is that a lot of people go, well, that's just a nostalgia thing for people who used to read comics growing up, but it's not. It's the way books smell. Any kid that goes to the library, any kid that reads books in school, all those books, they all smell. They all have that old book smell.
Right.
And it's part of that magic. It's part of that experience. It's not just about reading a story. It's about experiencing the story. So it's funny when people say it's just a comic book kind of thing, and this generation of readers, it hits their nostalgia, but it won't hit nostalgia like that for anybody else. I have 17, 18, 19-year-olds at shows that come up and say it smells like the old books from my grandparents' house. I love it. So it hits everybody in that way because that's just the smell of books.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's funny because, it's not just that, it's also just for, people saying, oh, well, it's not going to do the same thing to young kids. They're not going to have that nostalgia. However, how many young kids can drop $5 on an issue of a comic just for one comic? Whereas if they go into a comic book store with $5 and they could pick up 2 or 3 Alterna books for the same price.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is that not only can they do that with their own allowance money or whatever it is, but the parents can also buy comics for their kids. New comics too, not just the back issues. New comics, and the kids can go, drawing on them, tearing them up, whatever it is. And if you're a parent, you're like, it was $1, they're enjoying it at least. Whereas if it's, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever it is at this point with some of these single issues, you just go, boy, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think
absolutely.
so.
I was in the comic book store on Free Comic Book Day this past year, and I was in there with my daughter, and we were looking at the free comic book stuff, and we were just looking around the shop, and it was really funny because there was another dad and his daughter in there, and she was a little younger than mine, and they were looking at some of the Marvel stuff, and they were looking at some of the other stuff, and it was really funny because they seemed genuinely confused by, well, what is this and what is this and why is this so much more money than this one? And then it was really funny because I said, like, I heard them struggling, and I could see like he was like, dad was getting like, I don't even know how to explain this to my daughter. She's like, she must have been like 8 years old or something like that. And I basically just pointed them out to like, Alterna stuff. And then I said, and even like, if you're not looking to, if you don't know what you like, you don't want to just drop a ton of money on books, because if you don't know that you like those characters, especially for a young kid, they don't really know what character they really are into or anything. I pointed out like the dollar, what are they called? The Marvel books that are only $1.
The True Believers.
Yeah, the True Believers books. Like, and the funny thing was even with that, it was like, oh, these look better. I was laughing because it was like, yeah, well, there's a reason for that, but that's a whole different story.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Maybe if they were on newsprint, they would look better, because the coloring, they have to adjust that when it's going to be on the different paper stock like that. It comes out very garish.
Oh yeah.
But if they need a guy, I might know a guy that can hook them up with newsprint.
Well, that's, it's funny. That's the other thing too. I remember seeing when I first started like getting into Alterna, I remember seeing some people saying like, oh, well, colors on newsprint don't really work as well. And I remember thinking to myself, well, what are these people looking at? Because when I looked at a book like Eden, let's say, right, the colors on Eden blew me away. Like, I was absolutely over like looking at that book. The colors were so incredibly beautiful.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't know, what are you talking about? Like, the colors are gorgeous in this book. Like,
yeah. That's the thing that's great about them, is that the newsprint is probably one of the most versatile paper stocks that there is. And it wasn't necessarily the newsprint that's to blame. It's the fact that the color process and the capability for the digital software being used to color just wasn't up to par yet. So they had to do a lot of things old school. It's kind of the same way that with typesetting and laying out anything graphic design wise back in the 80s, 90s, whatever. It wasn't just, oh, you take it to a computer program and it does all these different things. So everyone's thinking about the comics from back in the day. I mean, to me, those still look great. I don't understand people who can look at that and crap all over them, because they still look fantastic, especially if you're looking at comics from the 80s and on.
Oh yeah.
Every now and then you still have the offsetting issue and stuff like that, of ink going from one page offsetting a little bit to the other page, or maybe a misregistration issue. To me, that was always just part of the charm of reading comics. But I mean, if that's not, to me, if that's not comics to you at this point, I mean, I want to know, when did you start reading them, and with what? Because if you love a certain kind of story, it's going to be great on newsprint too. So that's the thing to me. It's just, is it about paper stock at this point, or is it about the story? Right. Because everything else is just, bells and whistles. It's not really what it is, because if it's a good story, you can have this thing on a napkin. It's still going to be great.
Oh, absolutely. And that's funny because back in the day, I see Liberty Bell said Eden and Feast or Famine have fantastic colors. That's true. Feast or Famine's colors are awesome too. But I remember back in the day that used to drive me nuts when I'd be going to the comic store and just dropping tons of money, way more than I probably should have. And I remember, like, this is the day of, like, everything was either a chromium cover or it had a hologram on it, or, just something insane on the cover that would try to make you catch your eye. In addition to most of them having really cool art that would catch your eye as well. I remember just being frustrated back then, though, with the speculators buying up books and not reading them. And it wasn't so much that I was like, well, I don't, they got that copy and, it's whatever it might be. It's a big issue. And I didn't, and I didn't get my copy because I want to get rich off that later. First of all, no one's going to get rich off those books anyway. But what used to get me was that I just wanted to read the story. And so when I couldn't get a hold of one, it would drive me nuts, because I'm like, everybody bought this just because of what it is. I've been reading for the last 45 issues. I want to know what happens. The reason why this is a big issue is something story related.
Exactly. And what I don't get too about that whole entire time, you get issues that literally have it plastered. This is a collector's item.
Yep.
You get everyone that has, the bags and boards. So everybody buying all these comics, and then they don't look at them, they don't open them up, because they're good. They got to be mint and like super mint, right? They got to go right in the bag and board. And then you times that by millions of people doing that same process.
Yeah.
how did anybody sit there and think this is the key to what's going to make a book valuable? When this is the same thing as when you rolled up the book, Action Comics #1 or whatever it was, right? You rolled it up, you crumpled it, you cut it out, you put it, with the baseball cards, and you put them in the bike spokes and all that kind of thing. And that's what made a lot of those things valuable. Not to mention there was a whole mass, wave of just parents getting rid of their kids' comics back in the day. And just everything that had to go along those lines that made a lot of those issues valuable, because they had more print, higher print runs than most issues do during the 90s. So, but it just was the fact that they got rid of a lot of comics and no one took care of them.
Yeah, so no one thought they were worth anything.
Yeah, exactly. These things are 5 cents. Who the heck is going to think they're ever going to be worth $1 million? Or that this character featured within it is going to go on to become a cultural phenomenon. So everyone going crazy about it at that time, it just seemed like no one was using their better judgment to think, well, you know what, it matters more what's happening in this issue as opposed to what is plastered on the cover that is telling me it's important.
Right.
Is this issue, like, everyone did the whole judge a book by its cover as opposed to actually reading the thing. And it was almost disastrous for the industry. Although ironically, the industry was healthier at that point in time during that crash than it currently is. Yet no one is panicking as much as they were panicking back then.
Right. Well, when you hear the numbers, it's hysterical when you hear the number. Well, it's kind of sad actually, but when you hear the numbers of, like, for example, everybody likes to throw out the Jim Shooter like metric that Marvel used to have for canceling books. People would give their left arm to be selling as many books as he was canceling books at back then.
Oh yeah, those were like top 10 books today.
Yeah.
But you're looking at I don't know, the Dazzler series or something, and like that's like the #1 book right now.
Yeah, it's true though.
There's a reason Jim Lee started on Alpha Flight, because they're like, no one's reading this really, so we'll put you on it, and maybe you can do something for it.
Yeah, and who
is there even Alpha Flight today? I don't even think there is.
I don't even know
today.
I honestly, I don't even know. I stopped buying everything Marvel quite a while back. Me too. Yeah, I was done with it. It's just,
for me, again, I was going to say I stopped after the first Civil War.
Okay.
I stopped after that because when I got to the end of that, and I was like, okay, so all the heroes are fighting each other and none of the villains are going to really take advantage of this. It just seemed like this is stupid. So we're just going to have heroes fighting heroes, and we don't find out that there was anything more to it than that, and nothing is really going to, I know the next thing had to do with like the Skrulls or something, but it amounted to a whole lot of more of nothing.
Right.
And I remember comic shops being really pissed about that afterwards. And that's when I was like, yeah, I'm glad I backed out. And I just gave up at that point on them.
Yeah, it's got to be. And then, you know what, like I said, nowadays with the, this issue #1 is going to be $8. And then they're going to, because they know it's going to drop after that. People are going to buy the one. And then after that, it's going to drop. Then they'll do another #1 and they'll charge $8 for that one too. And then they just keep it. But it's law of diminishing returns. It's not going to keep working.
Yeah. And the thing is, it used to be a #1 would be a loss leader to get a lot of people in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, get them acclimated more to buy issue 3 or 4. It's whatever price point it's going to be. And you hope that they're hooked on the story enough at that point to stick with it. And then I think somewhere along the line, they noticed that #1s, no matter what, always seem to sell better than the rest of the series. So you might as well kind of gouge it while you can.
Right.
And in doing so, it's not necessarily to gouge the reader, but to gouge the retailer, because they're the ones that are going to be buying these things and getting stuck with them.
Right.
And then let them figure it out. Let them figure out how to sell them for less than what they bought them for. What is that? That's like you want to actually bankrupt the rest of the industry sooner or later. Then your #1s, they sell a lot. Well, now if you're putting retailers under with that kind of strategy, who are you selling these to? There's no one left.
Right. Yeah. Ultimately, you're just cutting your own legs off underneath you.
Yeah.
And that's why that's why I love that you're trying to get your books into just anywhere you can get them. And I think that's fantastic, because I remember as a kid, I used to ride my bike to the candy store. It was a stationery store. I used to ride my bike up there. We called it the candy store because I didn't buy stationery. I bought candy and I bought comic books from there. But I would ride my bike up there and I would just grab a bunch of random stuff, like whatever they happen to have. And that's how I ended up reading like some oddball books that, like, I know some people probably remember, like Strike Force Morituri, like just really kind of like odd stuff that used to, like, that's how I found Power Pack, like, just stuff that maybe wasn't like A-list stuff, but it didn't matter to me because it was like, hey, it's a comic, it looks cool on the cover, I'm buying it.
Yeah.
And at the time, what were they, like 60 cents or something like that? So it wasn't like I was breaking the bank on that either.
Yeah, and even then, people go, well, the things they always, they cost less back then, but it's kind of relative and all this other stuff. Well, not necessarily. That's not really what occurred. And I know that there's a lot more reasons as to why comics are expensive compared to inflation. They're more expensive now for 100 other reasons too. It has nothing to just do with the cost of the paper and this and that or whatever. There's a lot of things that happen in the industry, but you're gonna, if we want to see comics be more affordable, we have to realize there's some great economies of scale in this industry. So if we want to see better page rates, if we want to see lower cover prices, well, the people have to get, the people in charge have to get these comics into as many places as they can to get the print runs through the roof, attract advertisers, and show that comics are a viable business. And then also by doing that, by getting them everywhere and making it look, at least make it look like comics are really thriving, you get more people interested in comics. You get more people that want to open up a comic shop. You make the whole business look more attractive to both be in as a creator and to open up your own store to sell these things as well. But we have none of that. We have constant downsizing, and it's in a time where comic properties are more popular than ever before. So it's so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah, well, you would think that they would be selling better than ever, based on movies that make $2 billion.
Yeah. And if anything, more than ever now is a time for those kinds of companies to really look at that and go, comics could straight up be a loss leader. Still pay people well, of course, to make them. But we're getting in a lot more attention in all these other avenues. So use the comics to build that base of people that are interested. So they go see the movies, they go buy the video games, they buy the t-shirts and the merchandise, but the comics are the ground floor of all that. So it's strange to see that to get the whole thing, it kind of turned backwards a bit, and it's just weird. But at Alterna, that's how I'm viewing it, and so far it's been great. It's been wonderful to see so many people, especially because of the fact that for the first 10, 11 years, we just had graphic novels mostly, and we didn't have single issues. I didn't want to put out single issues that were $3 or $4 a piece, at least not. I think we only had like 5 or so over the past, the first 10, 11 years.
Right.
But at around 2014, 2015, and I've said this before, I saw the graphic novel market start to kind of stall a bit and start to, in some ways, decline, because every single publisher was flooding the market with graphic novels. And there's only so much room in libraries. There's only so much room in a bookstore. There's only so much of a budget that these places have. When you flood the market like that, and the comic industry loves to flood the market. They just love to. They don't know when to just, leave people wanting a little more. Right. They go, oh, this one thing sold. Wolverine's hot. 45 Wolverines now.
Yep. Well, it's the same thing with SpiderMan. I can't stand it. There's 100 different spider people like running everywhere. There is literally nothing special about SpiderMan anymore because they've just diluted it.
And imagine if there's only 1 or 2 SpiderMan titles, right? Now you have these print runs that are probably 300, 400,000 in sales. It's only 1 or 2 of the titles. It condenses that readership. And everybody's talking about these 1 or 2 titles. But then what happens is what they don't want. It creates a superstar out of the creators because everyone's aware of them. Everyone loves what they're doing. It's what happened, and gave rise to Image. But what gave rise, the second half of what gave rise to Image, though, was those guys were fed up. Yes. So don't make them fed up. give them an incentive to stay, give them a reason to be excited about, all this kind of stuff. So you have that two-part, problem, and then you create, more problems for yourself, but they still haven't seemed to fix and understand why Image even happened to begin with. They had a ripe opportunity to be like, no, you know what, we'll give you guys some profit sharing, we'll give you guys a revenue split here on the merchandising, and when we use your art and we sell all these things and we're making a ton of money. You guys work hard, so we're gonna sit down and let's talk about how we can keep you on board. And they didn't do that. They didn't care to do that. They said, you know what, you go do your own thing, good luck. And it worked out pretty well. And the only reason it stopped working out pretty well is because it was a bunch of artists that made a big company, and egos get in the way, and they're artists and they're having a fun time. And it turns into, scheduling is like, oh boy, we can't commit to a schedule. So they had problems too.
Yeah.
And eventually, all those growing pains, you work through it. We all have growing pains. Alterna still has growing pains. But it's funny to see though that the lessons of the past, they haven't been learned from. We're still kind of making the same mistakes. It's weird. But in this industry right now, I'd love to see a little bit of that enthusiasm and excitement that's occurring in the indie level, that's outside of the mainstream.
Right.
I'd love to see that come into the mainstream, come into traditional distribution. But since it's not, I'm not going to sit here and wait any longer. That's why we announced Alterna distribution starting up probably about this time next year.
Right. Yeah. I was actually watching that video just earlier today, actually. Yeah, no, it's funny because there is so much enthusiasm in the indie space and in the crowdfunding space and all that, like, that you just don't see anywhere else. And I think part of it is by design. I think Marvel and DC have by design not wanted to create superstars. Like you said, they were the Image thing really, it scarred Marvel seemingly forever. Like they just do not want to create any more superstars for whatever reason.
Which is weird because I view all of this a lot like running a sports team. You're always going to have your all-stars, and they need to be respected, paid, appreciated, right? But then on the back burner, you also got your farm team, you got your rookies, up-and-comers, all that kind of stuff. You've got your people who are just position players who, they're never really going to be, they don't have the talent and the skill level as those all-stars that put people's butts in the seats. But they're needed because without them, those all-stars can't shine. They can't do what they need to do. So everyone's needed. Everyone needs to be appreciated and understood what they bring to the table. So I never understood that lack of wanting to grow superstar creators at certain companies, because the next ones are right on the way anyway. So why are you so scared about these guys coming up and eventually they grow too and they have a following they take with them and they do their own thing, let's say, whatever.
Right.
And well, it's like you guys have something that they don't. You guys have characters that are yours, that people love and they're attached to. So all you need to do is keep making sure talented people who understand those characters keep working on them. And that happens all the time. So as long as you keep doing that, you can keep having that cycle of growth constantly. So I've never understood that whole thing that occurred afterwards. That really kind of made the industry play it safe. And in a way, we still kind of see the industry playing it safe, especially now where these companies don't need the comics to necessarily turn a profit anymore. Right. It's, if anything, they're probably a lot more of a headache than they really want. They look at that, and like when we were looking at, I don't know if you saw or paid attention to the AT&T DC thing,
right?
But looking at those numbers and that it was pretty much like DC's, what they earn in a year for Warner, it was like something like close to 400 million. AT&T's looking at that and goes, that's like one movie. Why do we have a whole a comic company that makes what a movie makes in its run? What that's a whole year or a month of a film. It just so someone's going to look at that at some point that has no nostalgia for the industry. No, they don't care about the comics. They just want to make sure the properties make money for them. And they're going to go, yeah, you say that the comics need to be new or whatever, but we could just do reprints for the next 80, 90, 100 years,
Right.
based on what was already made. And then on top of that, when you turn it around and go, well, where are you going to get your new stories from? Well, you can get your new stories from anywhere. You can get your new stories from, doing shows, animation, movies. You don't need to have new comic stories at that level. So, and all you need is that one person in there that's in charge of anything, looking at that. And that's it. And then the dominoes just start falling. That's why at this point in time, the best thing that a comic shop can do is see the writing on the wall. And now is the best time to go, you know what, we got to diversify. We got to get more indies in here. We got to get our store more acclimated towards going, there's not just superheroes. There's a whole world of comic books, organized by genre, all that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of stores I know that organize by genre, and they get new readers in that are used to the system way easier than it is when you organize by publisher. Because if you're a new reader, Alterna, Marvel, Image, whatever, it doesn't matter. What looks good matters, and what's in your budget matters. That's it, but it's going to be really difficult too, though, to make heads or tails of things. Because look at a title like Eden. So someone sees that and goes, well, is that like a religious comic? What is that? Just basing it off the word, let's say. But with us, we've got the genre in the corner in the barcode box. It says sci-fi and fantasy, adventure, that kind of thing. But we have to start doing that. We have to start utilizing a system that makes it easy for people, especially right now. Everyone's used to just sorting by genre.
Right.
So it makes perfect sense for the comic industry to start doing that too. It's not superheroes and then indies anymore, because indies is not a good catch-all. There's a million genres within that.
Oh, absolutely. There's so many different levels of, there's indie books for little kids. There's indie books for all ages. There's indie books that are, straight mature books, and there's all sorts of different stuff. There's stuff that skirts the line between superhero and not quite superhero. There's all sorts of stuff out there, especially right now in the indie space, where you've got, especially when you add in crowdfunding and things of that nature too. I mean, there's so many different things. Like, sorting by genre would be the best way like you said, for a new person walking into a store. They're going to know, well, I like crime stories. Now where do I go? Unless you've got it sorted, they're not going to have any clue where to begin looking.
Yeah, it's it's all going to be. I've been reading comics my whole life, and every time I go to a shop, I'm like, I don't know what the heck any of this is. And that's me. And I'm in the industry. I'm keeping up to date on what's coming out, but still, once you get in front of it, it turns into like standing in front of like a Pollock painting, and it's just this massive thing of color, and you're like, oh my God, what is what? I don't know where to start, and there's so many books out. You can't even necessarily count on the people who work at the comic shop to be well versed in all of them, because Lord, there's not enough time in the day to actually, be familiar with it. Even if just reading the synopsis is all you did,
right?
To have total recall of every issue and to do all it's madness. It's madness. And then, you're not going to go to the shop either and then go, well, this issue looks interesting. I'll read half of it and then put it back. That's going to be a great process for the shop owner too. It's just, oh man, it's so weird right now. It's all these common sense business practices that we have to start utilizing. And then we'll all see a lot of success out of that, top to bottom. And everyone thinks, well, Pete, you've been critical sometimes of the big two or whatever. That must mean that, you don't want them to succeed or anything like that. I want them to sell millions of comics per issue, because that equals money for the retailer. And the retailer makes money. They go, oh, these books look interesting. These alternative books look good. But I don't really know much about them. I don't know who's on them. But we have some money to throw around. I think they look good. We should put them in the store. Right. Whereas right now it turns into, I don't have 2 pennies to rub together right now to get these books in that look good. It doesn't even matter in some cases if they're affordable and less of a burden or a risk to get on as a retailer. I've got a lot of stuff that's supposed to be bankable that I can't move, and
right.
So right now that I'd love to see the whole industry thriving, even some of the creators that don't like me too much. If you've got a book that's going in the comic shops, for the love of all that's good and holy, please make sure that book does well.
Well, listen, that's the age old thing. A rising tide lifts all boats. It obviously, we were talking earlier about the 90s and all that. there were so many different companies back then besides just Marvel and DC putting out books. There was so many different people were launching new superhero universes left and right back then. You know, you had the Ultraverse and you had oh god, there was so many of them. Like, and because of people were just buying books like crazy, that they had the money to try these new things out and to carry these books. And I remember that was how I found some just off the wall weird books that just I looked at and I'm like, it looks cool. I'll try that. I bought a book. In fact, it's funny. I just the other day I was trying to find it. Somebody helped me find it. There was a book I read a few issues of back when I was young, and I thought it was like the coolest thing because it was like this underground like skateboard comic, and the hero had like a skull mask and he rode a skateboard, and like the whole thing was black and white. And it was called Shred. For some reason I kept thinking it was called Thrash, but it was called Shred. Somebody helped me find that out. And like that's the kind of stuff that like you just wouldn't even find now. It was like such a small publisher. I think they only published like 8 issues of that book, and I think they did like 2 other titles, and then that was it. That was all they did. But my store had it, and I was like, that looks cool. I picked it up. And like just random stuff like that you just, you know, like because people had the name, you know, people had the money to buy these extra books and put them on the shelves.
Yeah, and the funny part about that is a lot of those creators that started work on really obscure titles went on to go work on some really great ones. You know, and if you don't have these kinds of stepping stones within comics, you can't grow an audience for those creators. You can't have them cut their teeth on something that's a really big title. Like right now, it's a popular thing to say, okay, some creator had some mild success on the indie level. You know, whatever their social media is or how buzzworthy they are, let's put them onto a big book or something at a bigger company, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is that they're not ready yet, and you're doing them a disservice as well. And they probably are aware, because they don't want to grow creators and have them compete with them later on. But so now your failure is on a larger scale. You know, so it's the same thing that when I get submissions sent in to me and I go, this person, they got potential, but maybe it's 2 or 3 years away from having us work together.
Right.
The biggest reason for that, even if I like the sound of the book, but it's just not ready yet, is because if it goes out there and it falls flat on its face, you leave a bad first impression on readers. And now it turns into a question of, well, you know, then the next time around, I'm going to remember I didn't really like this person's book the first time.
Right.
I don't know if I'll like this one again. You know, even if it looks better, it's really difficult right now for people to give a second chance to comics. So you really have to make sure, you know, every single time you're trying to swing for the fences here. And right now, it feels safe. It feels like there's a lot of people that think they're being edgy, that think that they're putting out some really, you know, kind of crazy material. But all I could think is like, man, I read comics in the 90s. You didn't put out anything close to as crazy as that. So it's just, and it felt like at a time, especially in the 90s too, it felt like the revitalization a bit of the craziest part of the 70s and the 80s, where everyone was just trying to outdo each other.
Yep.
It was just, you know, well, that's been done. Let's do this. I don't care if it makes sense. I don't care if it sounds like it could even possibly occur or there's any logic to it. It's never been done before. We're doing it. We're putting it out there. And it seemed like that was kind of the driving force for these creative kind of outlets in terms of both, you know, I mean, even films. Look at like something like Bram Stoker's Dracula, right, with Coppola directing. Uh-huh. You know, you get like some steampunk looks going through. You get there's, you know, just even the look of Dracula right off the bat. You know, if I'm Keanu Reeves walking in there, I'm like, this guy is really, really weird. There's something strange happening here. You're not just like, yeah, I'm still gonna see, you know, what's up with this guy, and I'm gonna stay over his house.
Right.
You know, there's nothing. It's all insanity. But the thing is, at the same time, it's the look of it. It's something that you never saw before. So no matter what, even if it wasn't really necessarily factually true or logical in a way, it was it was crazy to look at and just think like, what's going on right now? This is nuts, you know? So everything was like that. Everything was like, give me something that I haven't seen before. And everyone was constantly in that mindset. You know, as long as I haven't seen it before, as long as it's new, I want to learn more about it. I want to hear the song. I want to watch the movie, whatever it is. And through that process, yeah, you're going to get a lot of duds, but you're going to get some real buttes in the process that like stand the test of time and become classics too. Whereas right now, you know, you get that distillation process that turns everything into like, well, the common denominator is whatever, and it's a corporate formula to come up with creative stuff. That never works out. That produces, you know, gook of the mind, and it's just like, ugh, you know, it's watered down.
Well,
yeah, give me something that's crazy.
I do feel like a lot of comics nowadays, and I mean, especially with comics, I always thought when I was a kid, you know, I used to make my own comics all the time. I used to just, you know, I'd make them up on the fly, whatever, and I would do mostly superheroes. And I share them. They're on my website. I've done some videos about them. If you ever want to see me, if you ever want to hear me really start cracking up laughing, watch one of my videos where I go back and do one of my what I like to call Jam Comics classics, that were books I did back, you know, when I was in junior high or high school. And you know, they're utterly ridiculous. They don't make sense, but whatever. But I feel like everything back then, like when I used to read comics or I'd look at comics, everything back then was just like, the bottom line was, does it look cool? Does it look cool? Like when it came to the art, does it look cool? I don't care if it makes sense. I don't care if someone could realistically carry a gun that big or whatever it might be, you know, like, does it look cool? And that was the bottom line, because, and this is the thing that I never understand about a lot of stuff now. It's a comic. You can do things that can't be done in real life. Now, I know, like, with movies now with special effects, we can do a lot more than we ever were able to. But back in the day, my whole thing was always like, you can do something in a comic that you would never have the budget to do in a movie, because it doesn't matter. There is no budget. The budget is just whatever you can draw or come up with. And I feel like so many things now, like I saw in the chat, they were making some comments about like people just sitting around and, you know, sitting around and talking while they're eating. And that's what half the issue is. It's like, this is like, I'm not reading comics to read, like, you know, to read Gilmore Girls. I'm reading to like see excitement and action and fun and suspense and horror, and just, that's what I want out of comics. Like, don't just give me blah.
It really is that way, because everything was, well, does it look awesome? You know, it was a bit of style over substance, and to a certain degree, too much of it. But the ones that had that really nice balance, man, that stuff you can still pick up today and enjoy the heck out of it.
Oh yeah.
So but you don't get that level of it without, you know, throwing the spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Right.
You know, you have to do that, because if every single thing it's already dead before you even put it out there, this defeatist mentality of, you know, it's too crazy for people, they're not going to like it, you know. I wouldn't publish probably 80% of what I put out at Alterna if I wanted to just stay 100% safe.
Right.
You know, but I'm like, is this good? Is this different? Is this kind of pushing things a bit? But yet still giving someone a good, solid, fun story. And that's pretty much like my criteria boiled down. Once you get past, obviously, the basics of if other fundamentals solid and everything else. But if you can't go into it with that mindset and everything's all about, especially in comics, like you said, especially if it's a superhero comic, if you want to start saying, well, logically, does this work? Well, you know what? Just get out of superhero comics, because none of this stupid stuff works. I don't care about your logic for Batman or whatever there, Christopher Nolan. None of that works. None of it.
No, the minute the man puts on the mask with the pointy ears, all logic should go out the window. Like, it just doesn't matter.
That's it. That's it. None of it works. You know, you want to tell me, like, people that get really upset sometimes about, you know, how certain things have to be in fantasy have to be so tied to logic and everything else, and oh well, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? And then I just go, well, you know, just don't watch Star Wars anymore, because lightsabers never I don't care what universe you're talking about. Light doesn't just stop.
Right.
All right. But does it look awesome? Is it awesome? Does it make my brain go, man, how the heck do we ever do that? Yeah. So let's keep it. So then, it's that kind of thing. Spider-Man, he gets bit by a radioactive spider. Now he's got the powers of a spider. He doesn't have cancer or anything. He's got the powers of a spider.
Right.
Okay. That's cool. Let's do it. It sounds fun. It's that
exactly.
kind of thing. Like the overthinking of it, and especially to me, it kind of all started to deteriorate when we had to make costumes realistic.
Yes.
Make them more realistic. I want to see the laces on every boot. I want to see the seams in every costume. I want to make sure, do they have tactical armor on at all times? And then, oh man. Okay.
Why would, it's funny because I always kind of put that to, now it's funny because for me, I always kind of thought that when the first X-Men movie came out, the Bryan Singer, the very first X-Men one, when that one came out, the costumes, when they had just the black, like leather costumes, I remember looking at that and going like, yeah, it looks okay, but it's not the X-Men. Like it's just not like, and I get like the idea of some things they feel like won't work on film or whatever. And so like, that's fine. I get like why in a movie you might want to do something where you have real actors. You might not want to put Hugh Jackman in, the yellow spandex for Wolverine's costume. Although I would have loved that, but that's a whole.
But then you can still see something like I forget the name. I think it's either like Bat in the Sun or Bat Under the Sun or something like that. They do a lot of these videos where it's like Wolverine versus Predator or something like that, right? And it's an astounding costume that they came up for him that really works and looks great. And all I could think is, or even Batman Dead End when Batman was versing again Predator, the alien, all that stuff. That looks phenomenal. It looks amazing. And it's believable, so it's just, to me, it's just once you start incorporating those parts of it, it turns into this big mess of like, well, now I'm questioning everything because you're setting too much in realism. I'm supposed to believe, because then that's supposed to be the hook, right? Is the whole, well, imagine like, this is them in the real world. And like, this is them in the real world. What the hell's going on in this world right now? We've got freaking Wolverine running around. Where you been, buddy? Even to get a little bit. I know some people really like this issue, but I thought it was kind of odd when they did the 9/11 issue in Marvel. I'm thinking, okay, so we have a world then of Marvel superheroes, and none of you guys could have stopped this.
Right?
Like, you don't want to have me go down that road.
No, because it ruins everything.
Yeah, it becomes this issue of like, all right, so what's happening then? What's happening in this world of superheroes then? Is nobody, we have a lot of other real world problems too that you superheroes maybe want to tackle.
Right, like you can stop Galactus from eating the planet, but you can't. But some people hijack some planes, and you can't stop that. Like like that. You're right. No, it breaks the world.
Because I understand if it was an outside the continuity kind of commemorative issue that went, charity towards that 100% totally. But when it became this part of it that it was supposed to be, woven into the fabric of the universe too, I was like, well, when do you start and stop weaving real life events into the fabric of that fantastic universe? Because now it's going to just become weird. And I think, it's become weird. And then they, of course, they go, oh boy, that was a little too weird. Now we got to start rebooting everything. And then, you bring on the reboots every, every year we get 3 or 4 of them. And that's fine, I guess. At that point, you go, well, why do you have a universe? You could tell a lot of really interesting stories then if you just stop with the continuity altogether. And just every single thing is, here's a story. Here's just the story.
Stands alone, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I look at what DC has done with Sean Gordon Murphy and his little corner of the Batman universe, where it's basically that is his universe of Batman. That the way he did the first White Knight, it felt to me like it was sort of a continuation of the animated series. It just felt like it was still in that same world. But you can see, like, it's funny, like, people love that. People have been waiting for the new one, like, with bated breath. They couldn't wait. They can't wait. They couldn't wait for it. And it's funny because it's outside normal continuity. It stands on its own. You can read it without anything else, and you just know that like this is just you can just read this story, and you don't have to read any of the other issues. You don't have to read anything else, and it's a huge hit.
Yeah, yeah. It's strange. I mean,
So-
to me, the
so, like-
whole I was gonna say the whole thing with Batman White Knight reminds me of kind of like a spiritual successor to that animated series episode where the Scarecrow is going to poison the water supply and Batman's in Arkham. I forget the name of that episode, but no one believes Batman. They think he's gone nuts because he's kind of got hit with the fear gas, so he's ranting and raving and hallucinating a bit. But it reminds me of that if he ended up in that space, and what would happen at that point, especially if you're able to say, well, here's the Joker now kind of taking things over. But
Right.
yeah, it's funny. It was always funny to me how episodically they got it all the time with the animated shows.
Oh yeah.
But then episodically in the comics, which basically are the same thing but just paper, just a book, they never get it. They always got to make it this big, crazy, stupid thing. It's got to have 10 million tie-ins. It's got to, and then they're like, yeah, but this animated series is getting critical acclaim and everyone loves it. It's like, why don't you incorporate then some of those storytelling techniques into your comics? It's the same thing. It's just an episode, one thing at a time, an issue, an episode. It's the same thing.
Well, and it's funny. Now we're talking about. We're talking about the animated series. Reminds me of one of my other favorite Alterna series, and that's Midnight Mystery, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, Bernie does a great job with that. Bernie Gonzalez.
I absolutely love that series. That's one of my favorites, and the art is just spot on. Bruce Timm, Batman the Animated Series style. Even the coloring, everything just reminds me so much of that world. I said it in my reviews too. This looks like they could have had Zeke as like in an episode of Batman the Animated Series and then just spun it off into something else, and this could have been like a spin-off of that. Like it feels so, it just grabs that feeling.
Yeah. For those of you that maybe have not seen an issue yet, this is the issue that's out right now. It's Midnight Mystery City of Ghosts. This is volume 2. It's the first issue. But yeah, here's the cover to that. But yeah, he does a great job with that.
Yeah, I absolutely love that series.
Yeah, that's the thing that I love with the books we have at Alterna is that there's Midnight Mystery, there's Blood Realm, there's Mr. Crypt, there's Mighty Mascots, there's Unit 44, there's The Chair, there's all these kinds of different books, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, superhero, action, crime. It's all, if you've got varying tastes, most of us do. That's the thing, we don't have to just read superhero comics, right? And there haven't been just superhero comics in a very long time. That's why it's so just when everyone was going crazy too about the whole, make comics diverse and this and that. And I'm thinking like, man, you got to make your tastes in reading diverse because these things have been diverse for a really long time. There's all kinds of books out there, something for everyone. It might not be just at a certain publisher, but if you expand your taste and you look around, even just go to a comic convention. Go to a comic convention, you'll see all kinds of books you didn't even know existed before because in most stores they don't exist. And so if you want to see a lot of different books by a lot of different people, just go to one show. Even if it's a smaller level show, you're going to see a ton of awesome different books, a ton of great stories, all kinds of different stuff. You're not even going to know what to do at that point. You're going to be overwhelmed with the amount of difference there is out there. So, it's just diversify your own reading tastes first and see what's out there.
Yeah, well, there's like you said, if you go to a show, there's so many. And now even if you live in a place that maybe doesn't have any shows or you can't get to one or whatever, just the internet now has just allowed people.
What's that? What's the internet? Is that the thing where people yell at each other on?
Yes. That's the thing where everybody hates everybody.
Oh, okay. I know the internet.
You can go. I mean, you look on the like crowdfunding sites. There like and just even just people self-publishing and all kinds of. There's so many different things out there. Like you could find a comic about pretty much anything at this point.
Yeah.
Like I mean, literally anything. If you want a comic book about like a teenage witch that rides a bike through the universe, I'm sure there's one out there. Like
Probably
like
5 or 6.
yeah, what exactly? Whatever you think, and then you've got the whole thing. And I don't know, I never heard you speak on this at all, so I'm curious. Actually, there's the whole thing of web comics, and web comics are. I tend to say a lot of times web comics are. It's a lot of knockoff manga and romance comics, but there is some other stuff out there. When you look at web comics, there's actually some really good stuff out there as well. It's kind of hard to find sometimes because they get buried, but there is some good stuff out there in the webcomic form too.
That's the thing. It gives what we were talking about before, where you have this outlet to kind of put out anything and everything. So within that kind of thing, where you're evening the playing field in some ways, you're going to have some things that are really not that great, and they're not going to be for a lot of people, and you're going to have things that are really fantastic, and they take off, and they really just hit all the right notes for a lot of different people. And then you're going to have things, the majority of things, in the middle. Oh, it's good, I enjoy it, you move on. But again, you don't get to see the really great stuff unless you're also willing to acknowledge the fact that to get to the great stuff, we have to make sure we're also letting the bad stuff get out there and be made too. If it all becomes this kind of curated process 24/7 of no one gets a shot unless they're a big name. Well, how do you make a big name if no one gets a shot?
Well, and it's funny because in a way, that's kind of what they want. They kind of want to keep that way, especially a lot of the comic pros that are working now. When you hear the way they talk, that's what they want. They don't want other people to get a shot, because then suddenly it might make them look bad when somebody who's a quote unquote nobody can make a book that everybody loves or just looks fantastic or whatever it might be. That makes them look bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get that kind of mindset. To me, it's you do your thing as best as you can. There's always going to be someone better than you, and there's always going to be someone worse than you. You just keep doing your thing, and then one day you're going to be the person who's on top, who's done stuff for so long, who's accrued all that experience and gotten better over time, and you're going to be that person who now is. It's like we were talking about before. People, we have only a certain amount of time within our life, so everyone who's doing great and is fantastic right now and really successful and out there, are some of the biggest stars in the industry. They're just getting older and older. They can only do this for so much longer, before they do different things or not as much things. So you're going to always get people who, you work hard and you work your way up and you keep at it and you build your following, you build your readership, and just stay humble with it. Understand that, yeah, you'll get better, but it doesn't make you better than someone else. I don't get that mindset. Everyone's so insecure with someone's going to take my spot away and take, the spotlight away from me or whatever. It's so weird. It's such a statement based in insecurity, and there's no reason to be insecure, but yet, this is comics, so I guess there's a lot of insecurity going around.
Well, and it's funny because it kind of leads to what I started doing, just with my channel, trying to focus. Like, I may once in a blue moon talk about maybe an old Marvel book or something like that, but for the most part, I do indie stuff, and I've done a couple of webcomic things and stuff like that, and I try to focus on like self-published and indie, because to me, I feel like this is where all the real creative energy is. This is where the excitement is. This is where people are having fun. This is where people are making good, entertaining comics. And, it feels like, in a way, I made a video once where I compared you to Paul Heyman.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. ECW, right?
Yes. But it's the truth. In a way, it's when
I don't know. I think I'm a little more buff than Paul.
Well, when ECW is at its peak, in its before it got bought out and everything else, they were giving the audiences something they weren't getting from the other companies, from the big two. Again, it's a big two. It was WCW and WWF, and the funny thing is, and I told the story on that video how there was a time where ECW was not on television here in New York. They were just not on. And they were on MSG, and then they got dropped, and they weren't on anything. So you couldn't even watch the show. And they were doing shows in Queens at the Elks Lodge. And we would go, my friends and I used to go to all the shows. And literally, they took Paul Heyman after the show. He came out and he made an announcement to everybody. Every single person who was at that show, he gave them videotapes, because this is like, you know, back when this is VHS tapes. He gave everybody in the crowd a VHS tape with like the last few weeks shows that weren't on TV in New York, just so they could see them. And they were autographed. He autographed them for everybody. If you wanted an autograph, he would autograph. And he literally stood in the lobby. I'm sure the fire marshal loved this, because he stood in the lobby of that building handing out videotapes to every single person in that crowd. And I mean, shaking hands, thanking everyone personally for being a fan, for being there. And it was like, this is a guy who gets it. This is a guy and that's what I compared you to, was somebody who gets it and appreciates the fans and appreciates the people who read the books and really wants to do the best for them. You know, wants to give them what they want.
Well, I mean, you know, the funny part is that I'm not aware, I guess, necessarily that I'm doing what I'm doing, only because I'm still very much a fan, even though there's a lot of things in comics that I'm not entirely pleased with for one reason or another. I'm still, I just met Jose Luis Garcia Lopez at Terrificon, right?
Mm-hmm.
I passed his table. No one was at his table. So that kind of upset me, but I was like, all right, I'm just going to think, okay, this is just me, you know, kind of walking around real quick. And maybe this is just a lull in the moment. He should have his table completely loaded up. For those that don't know who he is, he's pretty much the guy that has every single DC merchandisable thing you see is his art. He's the one that made DC characters look so iconic. You know, the Superpowers toy line, all of that kind of stuff. Everything was off of his look and branding. So I meet him and I go up to him right away and I go, okay, I should just talk to him because I don't know when I'm going to see him again. So I just go, you know, Jose, I was like, I'm a humongous fan. I was like, you pretty much like inspired my whole career. Him and Jim Lee's art is just that's what got me into comics.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, Jim with Marvel and then Jose with DC. And even though Jose didn't really do, you know, DC comics, he was DC comics to me because it was just everything you saw was his art. And that I go, you know, half of my house is based, and I'm not even going to lie. Half of my house, let me show you guys, is basically your art, you know? So, you know, and there's more in the living room and in every other room too. So I was like, it's just an honor to be able to shake your hand and tell you thank you. And he looked like he was actually going to tear up. It was incredible. And he's like, wow. He's like, yeah, thank you so much. You know, and I said, if it wasn't for you, I don't even know if I'd be making comics today. I was like, so I just want to let you know, thank you so much. And that was it. And then that was, I was just like, okay, good. I met, you know, one of my heroes. And he was wonderful. He was nice. And he had a bunch of people at his table the rest of the time. So I'm thinking, okay, good. I hit him in a little bit of a lull. But I'm such a fan still. So I just think, you know, I'm just doing how I would love to be treated by other creators as well, and you know, you feel appreciated and things like that. So especially at shows, especially if I'm meeting, you know, anyone, and I treat social media like it's a show, like it's a convention or a signing too. Mm-hmm. Where if someone comes up and they say, hey, I love your book, I read it, it's like, yeah, thank you for supporting, thank you for reading, it means so much, you know. And if the conversation goes further than that and they start saying, you know, what they loved about it, or they want to start talking about the books or have questions about Alterna or the creators or whatever, I'm more than happy to talk to them about stuff, as many people obviously know. So to do something other than that, I feel like, why would you do that? why would you do that? Why would you be any other way than that? That's just rude. So I just, you know, it's not even a business thing. It's more just like someone really loves something that you created and spent a lot of time creating it. It means a lot to them and they enjoyed it. I think it's only natural to just be like, wow, that means a lot. Thank you. I appreciate that, you know? So why there's so much animosity and everything, I don't understand. even people who have told me, you know, I didn't really like this in this comic or whatever, wasn't for me. I didn't really like this about it. I'm like, hey, thanks for reading. You know, I hope that there's things at Alterna that you do enjoy. You know, if there's the rare instance where I've ever dealt with someone who's been very rude about a comic or anything like that, you can always kind of tell when someone is being sincerely upset and they're getting a little passionate with their language, as opposed to someone who's just kind of crapping on you for fun. And they never read the book. They don't know anything about it. They're just kind of, you know, poking at you. But I can tell when someone's being sincere, when someone is being sincere, no matter how upset they're getting. I'm always keeping in mind, if this person didn't care at all, they wouldn't be telling me any of this. They wouldn't be saying, I mean, no matter how they express it, they're essentially saying, you know, I expected better from you guys. I thought this really wasn't that good. I'm disappointed. You know, what's up with this?
Right.
And to me, I look at that again, going back to sports. You know, I've played hockey my whole life too. I'm a rabid hockey fan. If my team is sucking that night, I'm not too happy in the stands. But it doesn't mean I don't love those guys. It doesn't mean I don't want them to win. You know, so it's that kind of thing of like, that's how I see that. I see that as that person is either in the stands, they're being like, you know, you guys, what the hell is going on tonight? You know, you guys are better than this, getting really pissed and all that kind of stuff. You know, if we're letting someone down in that way, which has only happened once or twice over our course of time. But I view that as that person really cares, and that, you know, let me see what I can do to get them possibly into reading something else that they really would enjoy, or what I can do maybe to say, all right, we're going to try to see what we could do about it next time around. And even if there's something we can't do about it next time around, because Alterna especially is creator owned,
Right.
I at least am acknowledging them. I'm getting feedback from them. I'm making them feel like they've been heard, which is, for so many people, that's way more important than anything else. To just be like, to just go, you know, I expressed my opinion and you said it's okay to have this opinion, and that you appreciate that I have this opinion. And that's it. And if anything, I had one person like that at a show that was getting really weird at the table one time. And they were going on and on about this book and that book and whatever else. And you know, that they don't like this about it, they don't like that about it. And then I was nice to them. And I said, you know, I understood where they were coming from, and that, you know, we're just always trying to, you know, find the way for certain books. And I always want to let creators do their thing. But I do hope the ones that you like, I hope you stick with those, and that you stay in touch and let us know what you're enjoying too. And, you know, years down the road, they're still reading Alterna. They'll still see me at a show, and it'll just be laughs at this point about them going crazy that time. And, you know, they were like, oh man, that's so embarrassing that I did that, and I'm sorry. And, you know, so it's funny. You never know. Like, you can catch people on the wrong day maybe, and they didn't. I don't think a lot of people necessarily expect that they're going to get a response. I think that they think sometimes they're going to say these things, and that it's like literally that's just going to fall on deaf ears, and they're just kind of saying their thing, and they're moving away. So if you're a creator and you get someone coming at you like that, to me, it's very easy to discern who's being sincere, even if they're upset, and who's not being sincere. And the ones that aren't being sincere, you don't need to necessarily engage them or respond. I mean, it's foolish. Why do that? But the ones that are being sincere, you know, try to always go, hey, you know, I get where you're coming from. Thanks for the feedback, and I hope you give my next thing a shot, and I hope you like that. And that's because that's all you can honestly say. You can't go back and then rechange their experience on that book, or redo that book. All you can do is kind of take all these different bits and pieces of okay, here was some praise, here was some critique, here was, you know, this and that, whatever. And then, you know, decide on the next one, do I want to do something about that? You know, this person said, you know, don't do this, but then this person also really loved that I did what this person hated, you know? So all you can do is try to make the best possible story you can make, but always be mindful. Someone's going to have their opinion on it. Someone's going to love it. Someone's going to hate it. And that's that. You can't just go through with the experience going, well, I accept all of the abject praise I get. That's all real. That's the truth. That's all true. But whenever anyone doesn't like it, that's not true. That's lies. Well, you can't do that.
That's like kind of the new handbook now, is when someone says they don't like something, you just declare them, oh, you were never a fan anyway, and this was not for you, and move on. Like, Apparently, that's the new thing you're supposed to do.
or that there's apparently companies that or countries even that spend a large amount of time developing sophisticated bot software just to crap on comic creators or whatever.
Right.
You're just a bot, whatever bot. And it's like, man,
Yeah, I don't think so.
you think people are reading comics and really care about them, don't you? Because they don't. This is actually a person who's reading right now, and you're just getting weird.
Well, it's funny. Like that's the thing. Like, if someone is getting that genuinely heated about something, they probably are a big fan.
Yeah.
And that's why they're getting heated like that, is because it means something to them. If they're just throwing out like a snarky remark or something like that, they probably don't really care that much. But if they're actually genuinely, passionately getting into something,
yeah, when they start talking the history of a character,
Yeah.
or you know what I mean, like I grew up with this character and that they would never have done this kind of thing. And especially too, what I don't get is if you're a creator, and a lot of these guys know where they're taking certain stories, especially if it's a legacy character,
right?
If someone's getting really upset, let's say I think like the Cap Hydra thing, everyone got crazy upset about
Sure.
that, right? I lost the plot as far as where that went. Did it turn out that the Cap is truly some Hydra agent, or was that kind of like, oh yeah, it was like a dream, like that kind of crap?
No, I think what they ended up doing was he was truly a Hydra agent the whole time. Which, if you think about it, he's probably the worst Hydra agent of all time, because how many times did he foil their plans? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But they said basically, yeah, he was that. And then they did some bizarre thing. I didn't even read it. I know they did some bizarre thing where they wound up, I think at the end of Civil War II, they killed him off, or they did, I forget exactly what
they killed him off again.
But they did something ridiculous. Yeah, it was absurd. Like,
oh my god, because they killed him off in the first Civil War, and I was like, oh man, they killed off Captain America. Well, he'll be back at the end, or it was a clone or something. Because at that point in time, I was like, they brought back Superman, so no one's dying. This is comics; nobody's gonna die.
Yeah, nobody's dead forever. Come on.
yeah. So everyone was going crazy about it, but I was like, why? Why are you going crazy? He's gonna be back. But yeah, so when you're the creator.
Liberty Bell in the chat says, yes, then they poofed a new Cap into existence to defeat him. That sounds about right.
You know what then? So this actually defeats what I was going to say. Because what I was going to say was that as a creator, you know where the story's headed. So why would you engage someone in a way that kind of turns them off from reading it? But that kind of sounds like they knew where it was headed, and then they just said, oh crap, we should change something back at the last second. And then just oh yeah, here's a new one, whatever, something from some pocket universe, and here's a Cap. And
I remember the Clone Saga with SpiderMan, everybody freaking out with the Clone Saga back in the day. And I remember and that was weird because that's pre-internet days, so that was like people in like letters column writing in like angry screeds to Marvel and stuff. And I remember just talking to people at school. I think I was still in high school at the time. And I remember, talking to people, and people were just so pissed about the whole thing. And like Marvel, like for a little while, I remember them coming out and saying like, no, this is it. We're going to stick with this. This is the real. And then eventually though, they were like, we can't stick with this. We have to do something.
Well, see, that's what I find so funny about this whole thing. And people have said, their pieces about this before, but I always say, to me, the most important thing about comics and readers is that we have the conversation occurring, and that it's okay to have that conversation. So if you're a reader and you want to scream from the rooftops every day about how much you hate this current book you're reading, and you're going to continue to read, but you hate it, it's upsetting you. As a publisher, as a creator, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with this person because they're reading and they're invested.
Right.
And that also means that they're not lost, they're not gone. The worst thing that you want is there's no conversation. There's people that don't care anymore. The person who says, you know what, like what I did after Civil War, I didn't say anything. I didn't tell off a creator. I didn't write to Marvel. I just said, I'm done. That's it. A lifelong Marvel reader. And I said, this is the stupidest thing I've ever read. It went nowhere at all. What a waste, between time and money. And you know, there was no alternative. I was just a 100% just a comic fan, and just, you know,
Right.
drew stuff and, you know, enjoyed comics and whatever. And then I said, that's it. I'm not doing it anymore. This is too much. You know, I've already been disappointed by a couple other events, but they didn't hit super hard. This one just seemed like, man, something's building up. Something's going to happen. And then it just goes, it's into the next event, and that's it. And like what? You know, you just like left her looking around like that was a lot of books and time, and nothing happened. And then it makes you go, well, why would I care about the next thing happening? Who cares about that? This thing that just happened that was supposed to be this really important thing, and nothing happened. None of it matters. None of it's going to matter.
Right.
So the next thing too, none of that's going to matter either. You know, and the whole point with comics and continuity and all that kind of stuff is that it matters. So with Alterna, especially, we have a lot of miniseries. Every single thing that occurs within that miniseries, per that character, per that issue, whatever it is, that matters. If we do another miniseries, it doesn't retcon what happened before. It's just a continuation.
Right. And that's I was going to say, I think that's really cool the way you guys do books, because you've got everything as a miniseries. So, you know, you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you're going to get a story. You're going to get a complete story. And if it does lead to another story, like, that's fine. It may do that. It may not. It may just be one series and done. But it's nice because you get that here is the story, and it's everything in there. You know that the creator making that book, everything in that, whether it's a 3-issue or a 4-issue or a 5-issue, whatever it is, everything in there is in there for a reason, and it has to be there. And you're going to get your full story. You're going to read it, and then you're going to be done with it. And you're going to be like, that, you know, you're hopefully going to say like, that was awesome. And, you know, look forward to the next one, if there is a next one. And if not, you're just going to look for, you know, you're going to read something else. And you're, you know, and that's the thing, like reading, like Wicked Righteous. I really enjoy Wicked Righteous too. And that's another one. When I read that first one, I read the, I didn't, that was after I had started. It had already, so I caught up, and I read the whole thing. And then now the new series is going, and I love where it's going, but you could have just read that first one and been satisfied.
Exactly.
You know, and that's really, I really think more, honestly, I think even I've said, I did a whole video about this before where I was just kind of spitballing about like what Marvel could do and what I would, you know, that would be better. And I always said like something along the lines of seasons or something like that would just, I think, solve a lot of their issues.
Yeah, that's exactly how we treat it. We treat it just like that. Like when it's a volume, it's a season, essentially, is how you could look at it. It's like it's TV shows, you know, so it's that episodic style of storytelling. Even if that whole season has this underlying plot, or it's all connected, or whatever it is,
right?
It still matters, and then we'll build upon what's coming next. Because that's the thing too we're seeing a lot of, I think, nowadays too, which goes back into the safety of storytelling that we're seeing in the industry. Is a lot of that deconstruction that's going on, is because that's a safe way to tell a story. You know, there's no risks there. It's just you're taking what exists and then you're tearing it apart. You know, to build is risky. To create is risky. There's always going to be inherent risk with all of that.
I don't even get me started on the deconstruction of everything.
Yeah. You know, it's everything is so painfully self-aware to the point that, you know, it's boring. And it is. And it's not enjoyable. At least I don't find it enjoyable. And I get the feeling most people don't either, or this stuff would be selling better. Yeah, the comic industry has winked so much it's gone blind. It's just these constant like, yeah, you get what I'm saying? It's like, you know, how about you just get the dust out of your eye and tell a good story? That'd be good.
Well, I think it's related. I think it's all related to it's the deconstruction, and it's we got a realism that we have to put into these comic books. All of it, I think, is connected, and I think it just makes them boring. And that, to me, the worst thing I could ever say about a comic book is that it was boring. If the art is okay, maybe it's not great, maybe it's really good in some spots but hurting in a few other spots or whatever, or if the story is like, you know, we could have done without this scene or whatever it might be, like, that's going to happen from time to time.
Oh yeah. Yep.
But if it's just boring, that's to me, that's death. That's absolute death for a comic book.
Yeah. Like I said, the whole thing with just people who don't care anymore, that they're just done. That's the worst thing. It's not that the worst thing isn't a fan who's angry or is saying something or saying how much you suck or whatever it is. Because the thing is too is that if they've been reading for a while, which those people always have, and that's where they're getting their point of reference, that means that they loved a creator who either came before you immediately or came before you a while ago. So at some point in time, they loved this comic and they loved it a lot. So you have to at least respect and understand where they're coming from. And if anything, you should be on the same page, only you're on the other side of it creating, whereas they're the ones reading what you're creating. But you should still have that respect and love as well for what came before. So if you don't, then I can see where the anger and hostility comes from, because you don't view what came before as important or good or necessary or that it matters. You view everything as what you're doing matters. Everything else doesn't. So that reader who views everything in the past as having weight to it and having some semblance of this should carry on, there should be echoes into the future, no matter who's going to be working on this kind of book. If it's this character, it should still matter what came before. If you kind of dismiss someone who gets upset like that, to me, that just kind of looks like an arrogant stance to take, because and for an industry that's supposed to go, hey, we love creators. Creators are all about creators, right? Creator rights, creator vision, yada, yada, yada. And yet at the same time, we'll quickly throw creators under the bus that came before them that built upon everything that they are now tearing down. That is strange to me, but yet it happens constantly.
This is it's funny because this is, I think, why there's so much energy in the indie space and in the crowdfunding and all. It's because people are making these books because they really have a story to tell. They have a book they want to make, and it's in their heart, it's in their soul, it's every bit of them that they're putting into these stories that are not just, hey, I'm just writing this to get a paycheck, or I'm just doing this because I got to pay my bills or whatever it is.
They have to do it.
Yeah, it's in them. They need to do it. They need to make the story, and they believe in the story, and they're willing to go to, some of these people are going to ridiculous lengths to make these things happen. A lot of these are people who have other jobs. They're people who are working full time. There are people who it's just something they've always wanted to do. It's been in them forever, and now is their time to try and get it out. And so they're just pouring their soul, their heart and soul into these books and into these projects. And this is why I love what I see from indie books and from crowdfunded and self-published. You wouldn't do that if you didn't care. You wouldn't launch a crowdfunding campaign. Now, because you've done quite a few of them, you know how hard it is to do these crowdfunding campaigns and how much it takes out of you. You wouldn't do that unless you really, really wanted to do this.
Absolutely.
And that's what I feel like. And no one seems to be, I don't know if I shouldn't say no one, but it seems like it seems like the fans themselves have taken it upon themselves to start promoting all these other indie and crowdfunded books that they see something that they think looks cool, and they're taking it upon themselves to help with the promotion and to get behind it and to feel like they're a part of it because they see someone putting their heart and soul and trying to put out a product of love. It's not just, a product to be a product. It's something they want to do, that they love to do, that they need to do. And as a fan myself, I love that. And that's where my energy to start this channel and my energy to even just simple things like retweeting and backing crowdfunding campaigns and subscribing to the Alterna subscription service and everything. Just this is where that comes from for me. That's where all the energy is now. And that's where it reminds me in a way of, certain things there used to be the punk. I always call them the punk rock comics of yesterday, where it was people just making a book and even if they were just photocopying it and putting it out somewhere or something like that, this is where we're at. But now the technology allows for people to make a better looking produdt than that.
Yeah, that
obviously.
Spirit is still there.
Yes. And that's where I feel as a fan and as somebody who eventually I'm going to try and make my own book, I think, because it's something I've always wanted to do. But for somebody who is just a fan and who loves comics and loves the medium, I feel like it's almost partially my responsibility to help promote this stuff, because because no one else will do it. I feel like this is where the love is. This is where the passion is. So I feel like I need to get that out there. And that's why, like, I do this channel. I work a full-time job. I have a family. Like, like, this is not, I don't just sit around making videos all day long. I have other things to do, other responsibilities. But I feel so like this is so important for me because I do love comics so much that I feel like I need to do this to get the word out. And that's why I'm doing my fanzine that I'm going to start doing in September. Like, I want that to be like just another way to help promote crowdfunded projects and independent projects and stuff. I just feel like anything I can do to help these people make their dreams come true and to get the word out and to basically, like, we're starting an underground, from the bottom up comic book movement is what it feels like.
Yeah, that's what needs to get done. And that's the great part of all of this, is that we all can have not an ownership over this kind of thing, but we all can help to kind of create the books that we want to create together. And what I mean by that is, you might not be actually drawing the comic or writing it out as a fan, as someone who supports a creator, but without your support, that comic doesn't get made. So in a lot of ways, it really takes away that veneer, that superficial veneer that, well, I'm on this side and you're on that side. It's
Right.
like, no, we're all in this together. We all love comics. It's just, even if you don't plan on creating them and you're just a reader and you just enjoy them, if we need you guys as much as, if not more, honestly, then you would need us. And then the thing is that creators, publishers, we all need to understand that. We need to understand that we need the readers to be there more than anything. Without them, there's none of this. We all can go do whatever day job or, kind of thing with the rest of our life. So I don't understand that kind of mindset either. And I'm not going about to get into that headspace, because it's not a good space to be, obviously. But to me, I love that kind of camaraderie that happens because of it. Everybody's just kind of excited about this creator or that book or, whatever. And it becomes this thing where there isn't this elitism where, I'm a comic creator and you're a comic reader. We all love comics together. And I hope you enjoy the stories we make. And that's it. I don't want to push people away from reading the comics at Alterna. And I don't want fans to feel like, we can't really talk to these guys, that they're above us or whatever. That's the stupidest thing ever, and it's just, you're going to feel that way. Like how I met Jose, you're going to feel that way anyway, in some way, when you meet someone their work has meant a lot to you.
Right.
But that all comes down, like in that instance, when I shook his hand and you can see the sincerity in his eyes that he appreciated that kind of comment to him. It all comes down and you realize, man, this is just a guy that busted his butt to do what he was doing. And he didn't sit there thinking, yeah, millions of people are going to be moved and affected by this artwork or whatever. He's just like, man, I got a deadline. I got to hit this deadline, and that was that. And you're so in the thick of it at the moment. You never realize, maybe years down the road or whatever, this book actually impacts someone's life. There's that book for every single major comic creator today that when they were a kid or whenever it was when they got into comics, that one book that lit that spark, and for them, like that's crazy that's their hero that did that book, and that's what inspired them. So right now, you're a creator, you're struggling, you're like, oh man, how do I get this out there? I just want to get this book done. I just want to get it made. I want to tell my story. We don't even think about generations from now. Someone reads that book and it inspires them. And that's how this whole thing keeps going. That's why it's so important to get comics out there. And that's why even things like Alterna Ween are so important, because it's not just about, getting Alterna into more places, or about getting Alterna out there for Halloween or whatever it is, or even just supporting Alterna because you like us. It's about the fact that, and this happened last year when we did it, thousands of kids got a comic book on Halloween. Many of those kids, that was their first ever comic. If even 1, 2, 3 of them go on to create comics because they read a comic on that day, and if it's their first comic that they ever read, that possibly could have been it. They might not have ever seen comic books again, or even given it a thought that they would like comic books. Maybe they move on to video games, or
Right.
movies, or TV, or whatever it is. They still do a creative field, but it's not comics. Now they go on to create their own comics, and then they create stories that impact people's lives, and it goes on and on. So it's stuff like this that you look at it and you go, man, it seems like a fun thing to get into. It seems like it'll be fun for Halloween, but you never realize like all the ripples, all the people that touches the lives of. So it's a big deal, and I'm truly grateful for everybody that supports it.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's you, like you said, you never know who's going to read those comics. Who is it going to be? Who's going to be the one that it inspires, who goes on to become the next, who knows what, could become the next Jim Lee, or the next, Todd McFarlane, or whatever. I mean, it could be anything, and just speaking as a, if I was a kid, I would much rather get a comic book from somebody on Halloween than like, just my 18th fun size, Snickers or whatever it might be, or even worse, when somebody drops like pennies in the bag or something like that.
Well, that's the fun part, right? Is that they will have candy from all these other people too.
Right.
And now at the end of the night, they get to go through their stuff. They're looking through their candy. They're eating their candy. They got chocolate all over their fingers, all over their face or whatever. And they're reading a comic, and they're having the best day of their life. You know what I mean? Like that's great to think that that's going to be a lot of kids on that day. And it's all because of the people that support this kind of thing.
And I know
it's
I was gonna say, and I know a lot of people last year who backed and supported it last year, didn't necessarily give them out on Halloween, but what they did was they donated them to children's hospitals and things of that nature too. So, I mean, even that, like, I mean, that's just, I mean, that's such a great thing. Like, these kids get a chance to read some comics. They get to enjoy it, even if it's for, 15 minutes, if they're, a kid in a hospital, it takes their mind off of what they're going through. And again, maybe it makes a fan. Maybe it makes a fan for life. It makes somebody who loves comics, and that's the key. Is we need, like, kids aren't reading. Kids, it doesn't seem like kids are voluntarily reading comics anymore. It's like, it's almost like,
it's you have to have somebody kind of indoctrinate them into reading comics,
right?
Because and that's not really how it was for a lot of us. If anything, it was the reverse. It was like, why do you want to read comics? Then rot your brain and whatever else. It wasn't that kind of encouragement towards reading comic books. But now we have a whole generation of comic fans that are parents, uncles, aunts, etc. And they see these and they go, you know what? I love these comics when I was a kid. I loved, all these kinds of stories, these kinds of characters. I want to pass this on. I want to share these comics with these kids. And that's how a lot of these kids kind of get into comics nowadays. And it's mostly because they just don't see them anywhere.
Right.
These things don't even exist. They're mythological beasts. It's a comic book. What's that? You know what I mean? And if anything, you couldn't go to a store 20, 30 years ago without seeing a comic book.
Right.
Even if it was just, obviously not the whole extent of them, but some comics you would see something.
Yeah, absolutely. There was, like I said, I used to ride my bike to the candy store, and they had a spinner rack in there, and I used to go through it and grab it. Whatever looked cool, I would grab it, and that would be what I would read. It wasn't until I got older when I would actually be able to go to a comic shop and specifically get the stuff I wanted.
Yeah.
So it was very, and I used to actually, and this is funny, when I was young, every year for Christmas, my parents used to get me, out of the Sears wish book.
Oh boy.
There was, yeah. They used to get me, there was a box that you could get from there, and it had, I don't remember how many were in it. It might have been like 25 or whatever it was.
I think I got that box too.
It was like 25 random Marvel comics in a box, and you didn't know what was going to be in there, and sometimes you might get like a couple consecutive issues, and that was really cool because you could read like, one right after the next, but it was just a bunch of random stuff, and I would read every single one of them. And I used to get that box every year for Christmas when I was little, and it was the greatest gift. I was like so excited every year when I got that thing.
Yeah, it's great. Even at Toys R Us for a while was having these kinds of comic boxes. They had like, I don't know, 5 or 10 comics in them, and I got, I think, 2 of the X-Men #1s.
Oh, wow.
I think one of them was Storm and Beast on the cover, and the other one was Wolverine with Cyclops.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got those 2 in 2 different boxes. But I know there's someone that actually, this story was going around a couple months ago. It was a pack like that. I forget if it was one of those kinds of boxes or something else. But one of the middle comics was the first appearance of Deadpool, and it was completely mint.
Oh, wow.
And, so you never know. You never know what you got in those things, whether it was worth something to you as a kid through sentimental reasons, or actually worth something because the character went on to become famous and popular.
Yeah, it was funny because, like I said, I can't imagine as a kid a cooler thing than like going trick-or-treating and getting a comic book instead of, just any of the other stuff. You get millions. Everybody goes to Costco and buys like the big thing of pretzel bags or something, like, and you get it like, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get like 50 of those in your bag at the end of the night. But you know what? Now you get a comic, you could read that, and then you're going to look at it and be like, well, where did this come from? What is this? If you have no knowledge of comics, you're going to look at it and you're going to read it, and then you're going to look at, and of course, let's face it, nowadays, like every kid has like a phone or an iPad or whatever. So they're going to look at they're going to see that in there. Oh, Alterna Comics. Okay, I'm going to go to the website. What is it? Oh, wow, they have more of these. Wait, there's a whole bunch of these things. What is this? Like, it's unbelievable what could happen, in the long run. And then, of course, if that leads them to just reading all kinds of comics, like that's even better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like I remember, this is completely, I mean, it's sort of on topic, but it's a funny story. When I was trick-or-treating one year, the weirdest thing I ever got trick-or-treating, some woman on my block, I was out with my friend, we were trick-or-treating, and this other kid that I had no idea who he was, he comes by, he's like, you got to go to that house. I'm like, okay, why? He's like, you just got to go. I'm like, okay. So of course we go over there. The woman, it was like this old woman in the house, and it's funny. It's funny now. It was funny then, but I have a little bit of a better understanding now just because of my job. I work with seniors, and so like it kind of takes on a different meaning for me now. But at the time, it was hysterical. She gave out records. She was giving out records, and she was giving out these jazz records. Now, like I'm like, at the time I was probably like a 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid, whatever it was, and she's giving out these jazz records. And I distinctly remember her telling me her son was in the band, and like she gave us this record. She gave me one. She gave my friend one. She was giving out just the same record to everybody. She must have had 1 million copies of this record. I guess her son really was in the band, and she just had 1 million copies of it. And so she was giving out records for Halloween of these jazz records. And I'll never forget. It was like the weirdest thing that I ever got for Halloween, but I'll never forget it. And we actually did listen to the record, and like, for like an 11-year-old, a jazz record wasn't really going to do much for me, but like, I was like, whatever. But it was just the weirdest thing. But like, I'm just thinking from a more positive standpoint than that just being weird. Kids now getting a comic book, it is the one they are going to remember that. Like, they're going to remember that forever. Like, whether they love it or if they just read it and they're like, okay, that was that, I'm moving on and whatever. They're always going to remember that like they went to a house and somebody gave them a comic book for Halloween. That's always going to be in their head.
Absolutely. It's the same thing that when I was like 5, I met SpiderMan at Caldor.
Oh, wow.
And I remember the line wrapping around the store, and it's just like, and at the time it's like, yeah, of course, you're going to wait for like an hour to meet Spider-Man, right? Now as an adult, you're like, yeah, it was someone cosplaying as Spider-Man.
Right.
But, as a kid, it was a good looking costume too. It was legit. And I remember it's just like that scene from Christmas Story when he's gonna go, meet Santa.
Oh yeah.
It ends up better than that for me. But it's that same kind of feeling. I remember being in line and I was next, and I'm seeing Spidey take a picture with a kid, and the guy that played Spider-Man, he was on top of his chair. He was kind of doing like a Spider-Man pose, and he was just posing with kids. And I still have like the Polaroid somewhere. I think my parents have it, and he's doing like a Spidey pose with every single kid, like some kind of like on the shoulders, like looming over or like whatever, or doing like the web shooter stuff, and so I meet Spider-Man, and I'm going up to meet him and everything, and I still remember being like, completely in awe of like, I'm meeting Spider-Man right now, and he's all saying, Spider-Man type things of being like, hey buddy, how's it going, like that kind of like just a nice kind of attitude because he's Spider-Man, right?
Right.
And he's like, hey, what do you got there for me, right? So I give him this. I had a record. Speaking of records, it was a Spider-Man record, it was a Power Records thing. I had two of them, and he signed both of them, right? He signs them as something about, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And again, it's just this dude in a Spider-Man suit that was hired for the day, obviously, to sign. But for me as a kid, I'm like, that's Spider-Man signing my stuff as Spider-Man. And they had a stack of comics. It was, and I still have the comic, actually. I have it right over, let me get to it. Where is it? Yeah, this one. So Spider-Man, he signed the inside of this one.
Oh wow.
Right. I read the crap out of it, so it's really bent and beat up and whatever. But so he had a whole stack of these issues, Spider-Man 332. And so he signed the inside. And I remember thinking like, man, Spider-Man signed my comic. Right. And then we get a picture together, and it's just the greatest thing ever. And just that day still burned into my brain. 30 years later, I'm still remembering, what it was like to be in line that day, what it was like to see Spider-Man, all that kind of stuff. So it's all I could think is like, that's the kind of impression this stuff leaves on kids, leaves on people. It's powerful. It really is. And I'd love to see even more stores do things like that, especially nowadays where we've got cosplayers who really get into character and have fantastic costumes. I know a guy, Kirk George. He's wonderful. He's got an Iron Man suit that actually, like the mask goes up, like the things open up the compartments and everything, like the chest piece glows. It's beautiful, right? And he does stuff all the time with children's hospitals. He'll go to a children's hospital with a bunch of comics, and he'll be Iron Man. And he'll meet the kids and everything. And he's like, sometimes it's really hard for me to not tear up because they're getting so into it and so moved. And he just, to stay in character, he's like, man, I really got to focus. But like, that's all I could think is like, that's the power of these characters. That's what they mean to people. Even kids that just have a kind of a passing knowledge of them, that's what they mean to them. So why are we gonna do this thing where we kind of start crapping on people? Because all I could think is, that kid, right? So that kid who got that picture with Spider-Man, he's probably a lifelong fan like myself.
Right.
Now, if he's upset, let's say, about Spider-Man becoming, this being poorly written or taken care of in a way that it's like, what is this? I love Spider-Man my whole life.
Right.
As a creator, would you go back in time and tell that 5-year-old, hey, shut the hell up. This isn't for you. Because that's what you're doing when you do that to people. When you crap on their nostalgia and things like that, you're essentially crapping on the child at heart who loves that character, who fell in love with comics and those stories all those years ago. And when you say stuff like that, that's you going to the playground and pushing that kid down and saying comics are stupid, grow up.
Mm-hmm.
Not cool. I'm sorry. That's not cool. So, this kind of thing, I want to see more unity within the comics world, and that's what I love with Alterna is that we got great creators at Alterna that they love their readers. They love the stories that they're telling. And if a reader comes back with a criticism, they listen to that and they go, okay, yeah, thank you for reading. And I'm going to see, maybe there's something we could do better in the future. We'll try. And it's that kind of thing. because you want people to stay talking to each other. Because readers also know, yeah, we're people too. You know, we're not perfect. So maybe there's something we didn't notice. Or maybe sometimes, you know, you're like, oh, I really wish I could have told that panel differently, or, you know, had a couple more pages to tell this story a little bit fuller, maybe in some ways. But you just can't. But then you're like, you know what? And if you're honest with yourself, you go, readers are going to see that, and I'm expecting it. So, you know, you sit there and hope, it's okay. But then, because that happens to me all the time, I'm aware of a lot of the different shortcomings that can occur. And when someone will say, hey, you know, this occurred and that occurred, and this, you know, could have been a little bit better sometime. And I'm like, I agree. You know, you got us, that kind of thing of like, okay. You know, and the thing is, you used to see a lot of that stuff in the letters pages of Marvel, especially, right?
Right.
Readers kind of calling them out on certain things.
Oh yeah.
And the editors being like, oh, you know, sorry, you got us. It's just the fun of it.
Yeah, and it was funny because back then they had fun with that too. When they would answer those kind of letters, they would be like, yeah. Like, yeah. You know, or even that's kind of like, if you think about it, that's kind of what the whole idea of the no prize was. It was like, okay, we screwed something up. Fix it for us. Like, and that's what it was. It was fans like coming up and concocting ways that like, no. This actually does make sense if you think about it this way. And then, you know, they would do the whole you got a no prize for, you know, bailing us out of that weird, you know, situation we put ourselves in. But
Yeah.
they never said like, you know, oh yeah, no, that's exactly what we meant. You know, like, no,
right.
They do, you know.
And I'm sure that obviously, I mean, I know this for a fact from a couple of the people that I know that worked at Marvel a long time ago, especially. They got some really nasty letters here and there. I definitely know that that's true. But the thing is that you just, again, you use your better judgment and you go, is this person legitimately saying something here, or are they just kind of being ridiculous? You know?
Right.
And no matter what, above and beyond, whatever it is, you don't fire back with, well, you should stop reading them.
Well, that's the thing you can do.
That's like the weirdest. If anything, keep those people fired up. Keep them hooked to that story. Keep them going, man, I can't believe they did this to this character. I love this character. What's going on here? You know, I got to read the next one and find out what happens. That's what you want. That's what you want people to do. So I don't understand this kind of, you don't want people to feel that way. You always want people to feel that way. You want them to be so invested that they go, man, like, I can't believe what they did to my favorite character. What's going on here? You know, and see how it plays out. And especially nowadays where readers can just reach out. Just say, hey, you know, I hope you stick with it, see how it plays out. And that's it. It's like all you need to say if you're going to say anything at all to someone like that. And that's the majority of comics right now, is it's just handle it in a way that if this person was right here at your convention table, how would you respond? Because I guarantee you would not say 90% of the awful things that you say online, you know, and it's just the truth of the matter. You know, every time I do a show, I'm like, you don't see any of this crazy stuff. You don't see any of these awful interactions. You don't see any of this negativity. It's great. It's wonderful. It's the best thing in the world. And then you know, like every time I'm at a show, everyone always says, man, did you see what the craziness going on Twitter? And I'm like, I don't even look at Twitter when I'm at a show. I don't want to even know that there's Twitter that exists. I just post to it and I respond to people that post back to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not looking through and trying to catch up on anything. And especially at a show, you want to just kind of be in that world, you know, and that's the craziest part. Is that all the madness that occurs on comics, Twitter, and everybody's always upset and whatever else. You go to a convention, and I tell you, none of that's there. None of it exists. So
yeah, well, it's funny because, you know, it's you see people, you know, listen, anybody who works, and that's pretty much, you know, everybody who works in a job, you will work with people that you don't like. You will work with people that you do like. But you still have to work together regardless. So you don't see, like, I don't go to my job and there's like people, you know, screaming at each other all day long, calling each other names and this and that and the other. No, because they would all be fired. Like, that would be the end of it. Like, so if you treat the comic book business like a business, when you're interacting with people, when you're interacting with other professionals, and when you're interacting with customers, you really wouldn't have to worry too much about that.
No, yeah, because otherwise it just snowballs. It just gets worse and worse and worse. Every time. There's one question in the chat from Calistini I wanted to answer real
Yeah.
quick. He goes, Pete, with your new arm, will I be able to retail digital copies if I build a secure platform? I think he's talking about Alterna distribution, which will be up next year. We're not going to be distributing digital. That's unfortunately and fortunately in some ways, because right now digital has become just absolute chaos when it becomes out there and turns into piracy. A lot of creators, there's no way to guarantee that these books won't become pirated. And I'm not saying that you're going to pirate them. I'm saying that just to get them out there for somebody else, to go through all of that and then have creators go, hey, we trusted you with these books and now they're being pirated everywhere. There's no need to bring that kind of headache to us. Not to mention, honestly, digital sales really aren't that hot with comics. It's about 10% of the entire industry, and it's kind of stayed that way for about 5 to 6 years. So it's just the amount of work, the amount of money, the amount of investment. No way. I'm sorry, though.
Yeah,
Wish I could say yes.
Yeah, it's funny because I will read some comics digitally if I don't have any other choice. If I can't find it anywhere or whatever, I will do that. And to be perfectly honest, I can be from time to time a bit, shall we say, frugal. So if there's, if I see like a great deal on something or whatever, I might pick it up digitally or I have my my Comixology Unlimited subscription. So if something's on there and whatever, um, I'll read it digitally, but I so much prefer, and I think that's the thing. I think a lot of people, when digital first came out, everybody thought, oh, this is the future, this is what it's going to be, and then everybody, like, as it started going on, more and more people started realizing, like, yeah, this is all right, but it's not the same thing. It's just not.
Yeah, in every single possible way, especially the biggest one that also matters in comics, which is value too. You want to feel like you're getting a good value for what you paid for. And at the end of the day, if all you're really getting is a digital file, it just feels like, I could have bought the print one, because a lot of them, they cost the same amount.
Right, yeah,
It's
well,
not
that's
like
the other thing, yeah.
digital's 99 cents across the board or whatever it is. That's the thing. Everyone always points to, well, it's like iTunes with the songs and this and that. It's like, yeah, well, the songs were 99 cents a piece, and you can do an a la carte kind of thing. The comics being pretty much exactly the same price as their print counterpart. And obviously that's for a lot of other reasons too, because of the fact that they don't want to get retailers upset. But the thing is that the books aren't being read digitally. So you don't if you're a retailer, you don't have to necessarily worry too much about you're losing tremendous amount of money through someone that's reading it digitally. If anything, I found that all of our digital stuff, because our digital stuff at Alterna is 99 cents.
Right.
You could buy the digital copy and the print copy, and it's $2.49 in almost every case.
Right.
So it's cheaper than like every other book still that's just in print. But the thing is with digital, it really is. It's a whole kind of different reader, because I think Alterna is in a unique position because we did certain things with certain readerships for a long length of time. Like when we just did graphic novels for a really long time, and we saw okay numbers. I think they could be a lot better, but the industry was getting flooded and weird at the time that we got in. But when I went to do these single issues, some of these books, they're re-released, like Mother Russia, Unit 44, The Chair, Trespasser, Scrimshaw Volume 1. A whole bunch of them are re-releases. Single issue wise, 10 to 15 times the sales. Wow. But the graphic novel was already out, and we're all told the graphic novels sell better and sell more. Well, you could even look right now at the sales charts for the industry. Generally, that's kind of the same thing. You're going to see single issue counterparts sell 10 to 15 times better than their graphic novel counterpart. So this big push as if graphic novels are the savior of the comic industry, it's not the manga industry. The manga industry operates in a very different way, and they're everywhere.
Right.
They're everywhere. And there's that's the thing too, right? You go, well, to someone, do you read comic books? The large majority of people are going to assume you're talking about superheroes. Even comic readers are going to assume you're talking about superheroes. If you tell someone, if you ask someone, hey, do you read manga? It's going to be, well, which one, what kind of stories? That's going to be because manga is not associated with a genre.
Right.
It's the same thing with like movies, TV shows, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you wouldn't ask someone, do you like movies? Well, everybody likes movies.
Yeah.
It's what kind of movies do you like?
Yeah, there's no default genre, that movies equals sci-fi movies, music equals heavy metal, sports equals baseball. It's not code for something. Right now in the comic industry, comic books, especially in North America, is code for superhero still. And it's because the industry, for whatever reason, does not want to acknowledge that there's other genres, there's other companies that are producing a lot of high quality content. And, so the average person isn't aware of these things still. I mean, I talk about this all the time. So if anybody's in the chat, I greatly apologize. But when I do signings at Barnes & Noble and I've got the chair, I get at least 2 to 3 people every single signing. They come up. They go, oh, this interesting cover. I got to check it out, right? So they pick up the book and they go, it's a comic book. They still make these every time. And they always walk away with it, though. They always get it. That's the thing, is they always get it because it's a comic reader who doesn't see comics around anymore. So the conversation always turns into, well, don't you have a local comic shop near you? Sometimes they do. So then they'll say yes. And I say, okay, yeah, they still make new comics all the time. They're like, I thought that it was just collectibles and old comics. I didn't know they still made them because I don't see them anywhere anymore. I used to get all my comics from like a 7-Eleven or this place or that place. I saw at the grocery store, and they don't have them there anymore. So I figured they don't make new ones. That's a huge chunk of readership that's just gone.
Right.
Because out of sight, out of mind. Everyone always says, I love this excuse. This is a favorite of mine. Everyone always says, okay, well, comics don't go into those spots anymore because the real estate that they take up, that per square footage type of thing of how much money they make compared to how much, whatever that space is costing the retailer. Comics are too cheap. They don't make enough money because, video games, they came in and they ruined comics. Everyone buys video games. Now no one buys comics. Yeah, that's why I see video games at every checkout at the grocery store. And, there's just a whole stock of them is at 7-Eleven. And there's always a spinner rack of video games wherever I go. I can't help but see them every single place that comics used to be. But what is up with that? What is up with this kind of, again, it's making excuses for the shortcomings of the industry. Right. Yeah, video games came in and they also captured a lot of people as well. But I still read comics and played video games, and I knew a lot of people that did that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if anything, right? I mean, we grew up with remember the Maximum Carnage Sega and SNES game, and the Wolverine game, and the X-Men game, and the SpiderMan games. If anything, that was a synergy there. You love the comics, and now you can play as your favorite characters.
That Maximum Carnage thing was huge. I remember reading every issue and then buying, like I said, I had the red cartridge for the Super Nintendo because I was a Super Nintendo kid. But that was huge. Everybody knew what that was. Even if you weren't a comic book fan, non-comic fans still knew what that was. They knew who Carnage was. They knew who Venom was. They knew who Spider-Man was. And that thing, if you look at the numbers that game sold, even if you go back and look at that, it didn't just sell to comic book fans. That thing sold to everybody.
And to get even more ridiculous, right? Speaking of which, with video games and comic books, we've got Earthworm Jim. Earthworm Jim making the most money of any comic book crowdfunder ever.
Yeah.
And now it's a video game. And that's because all these people want to read that comic because they played that video game. So, it has nothing to do with the creator. It has nothing to do with anything other than they loved that video game. They loved that character. And now it's going to be a comic.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
That's all it is.
Yeah, it's a lot of it. Yeah, it's I look. Replay Station here said something like, blows my mind that Avengers merch is everywhere, but you can't find an actual comic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the truth. That's the
Yeah.
truth. How is it that, that movie, like Endgame, made more money than any movie ever? Like, let that sink in for a minute. More money than anything ever. Like that movie made so much money. And yet, and people know these characters, people who never knew these characters. And it's funny because when I talk to people, sometimes they don't realize this. But I mean, as being a longtime comics fan, like back in, when the first Iron Man movie came out, Iron Man was like a B or C tier
Oh yeah.
character.
Yeah, probably C at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it wasn't like he was this giant character everyone loved. He was selling millions of comics and it was just a foregone conclusion that this was going to be a hit. Like
And if anything, post Civil War Iron Man, which is when that movie came out, like he's a big jerk off to most of the people within the comic reading community. So yeah. And meanwhile,
and yet those movies, people, it's funny because people who don't know, people who just came in through like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like they just assume these characters were always super popular. And, they weren't. The only reason they made these movies is because they didn't have the rights to the other characters that were bigger characters, the X-Men, Spider-Man. Other companies had the movie rights to them, so they didn't have a choice. They had to make these characters work. Otherwise, they bought Marvel, really, what for? And
exactly.
And it's funny because you would think that with them becoming so popular, that it would just be a natural extension that the comics would have seen a giant uptick in sales from just the huge amount of popularity that they have. But they completely they haven't. They haven't even gone to so far as, at least not that I know of. When you went to a screening of, let's say, the first Avengers movie, how did they not have like a promo comic that they gave
opening
out?
weekend at the very least?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Even honestly, even if it was something like a character guide, along with the essential issues or trades of this character that you should pick up at your local comic shop. I don't know what's going on. It's very backwards. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It seems like, and it's so frustrating that it really, you almost can't come to any other conclusion other than, you guys you're not dumb. You guys are pretty intelligent people that are running these things. So this must all be on purpose, is what it must be. Which, obviously I've talked to a lot of retailers too, and they all have said the same kind of thing of it's just how big business works this way. They don't really want to deal with small retailers and all that kind of stuff. They want the big deals. They want Walmart and Target and all the big places to get into. And the thing is as long as the smaller retailers kind of stand in their way, it's harder to shift focus into those bigger areas. And to some effect, you have to look at that and go, well, I guess that's why they're doing what they're doing, because it's kind of doing exactly what we're all screaming about, and wishing wouldn't happen, which is it's slowly killing comic shops and the comic industry as we know it. But it's because it doesn't really matter to the powers that be.
Right.
Which is, again, why comic shops, you need to shift and understand you're going to get new readers. It'll be okay. It's just organized by genre. Open up a big new world to all your customers coming through. Whoever else that's just like, comics, it always just seemed kind of too difficult and too intimidating to get into. Well, it's not. It's not. You can pick by genre now and look at a couple books and jump onto a story and find the back issues when it looks good to you. And you don't have to be so confused anymore or intimidated and not know what you should get.
Right. Well, and
so
we
could do a lot of that.
You also aren't, if they do that, the customer comes in, they're not limited to, well, I have to only get a comic book means I have to get a superhero comic, which for a lot of people by default means Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, the big names. And I haven't been reading them for the last 50 years, so I have no idea what's happening. No, you don't have to do that. You can go in, you could find anything. You could pick up, if you want something funny, you can look for a funny book. You can look for something horror. You can get, anything you want, you can find. If you want something that's going to be fun for your kids to read, while something like Mighty Mascots would be, I think, fantastic for kids. That book is great.
Oh, yeah. It's like a Saturday morning cartoon come to life in a comic.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's the thing. Like you could literally walk in and be like, "Oh, okay, what's this? Oh, it's issue 1 of, Midnight Mystery. Okay, cool. Now I can actually read this." Or like when the Giants come out, they could come in and see, "Hey, here's Blood Realm Volume 1. This looks cool. What is this? It's freaky looking horror fantasy book. All right, yeah, I'll check this out." And you don't have to worry about, well, I didn't read the past 50 years of continuity. I'm worried about jumping in. Although it's funny, I know people always talk about that. And my friends and I always talked about, we never had that problem. We jumped in the middle. Like there were all those years of continuity. We didn't know what was happening. You just kind of jump in and just swim along. Eventually you'll get it.
Yeah, even right now too, because that's the other thing with Alterna that I love that we do this is that, we'll have it up top that it's a mini series and it'll be number 4 in a 4 issue or whatever it is. So you'll see that right off the bat. And if it looks interesting, you go, okay, well, I'm going to try to see if I can find the other issues too. So if your store is sold out, you can look on eBay or wherever else. I always say at this point, you should look at Alterna Comics and look at Alterna Access first. But a lot of people, that's the thing, a lot of people don't get that we sell direct because most publishers don't sell direct. It's kind of a weird thing to see a publisher, you sell a lot of your stuff, a lot of your back issues direct. So we sell all that stuff in that way so that this way people can go, well, I just see issue 2 or 3 or whatever it is. I don't want to necessarily read this if I can't read it from the beginning. And well, yeah, you can just go to the site and you can find all the books here. And that's the thing is that what's great too, that I'm starting to really, really push this. If you have a store that's frustrated with the current distribution system and getting Alterna, especially, let's say they can't get a hold of the back issues because they sell out too quick and distribution doesn't want to fill reorders or have us fill reorders, honestly. Let your shop know they can order direct from us. Calistini Comics, who's in chat right now, orders direct from us all the time. Gets a whole bunch of books in every 2-3 months, and then he's got his stock and he sells through his stock and then repeat. So if you're a store, whether you're watching this or you go to your store and you're close with them about anything, let them know when it comes to Alterna, they should order direct. They'll make more money when they order direct. It's an easier process and they'll get the books that they need to sell and they can grow a readership for Alterna within their store. As opposed to right now, a lot of stores too, the way ordering works is that you have to pre-order everything. And then usually you're pre-ordering, even with Alterna, it's every other month a book comes out, but you're still, you're not going to know how a book is actually taking in your shop until usually issue 3 or so. So by the time issue 3 rolls around, issue 1 and 2 is completely sold out from distribution. So now you're hearing, wow, issue 3, this series is good. People like it. I wish I got more of issue 1 and 2.
Right.
But now I can't because they don't have them. So now you're kind of stuck in this position where you go, well, that was that. All these people I could have sold on the series, I can't sell them on it anymore because they don't have those issues. Well, you don't have to be in that position anymore if you're a store. You can order direct from us, get those issues in. And I love it when we get a store that signs up. We got 5 or 6 that signed up in the past week.
Nice.
And they all placed orders. And a lot of them did reorders for things. They said, I can't believe you have all these issues that we've been trying to get for months. I can let people know now that we're in the shop asking for it. I had no idea. So it's all this kind of stuff that in the industry, we are losing every single avenue where we should be growing. We're losing all the time. And then we're constantly wondering, well, why aren't comics doing good? And we're coming up with the stupid answer of, because people don't like comics anymore. That's the stupidest answer I've ever heard. Go look at every single crowdfunder that's so successful. Any crowdfunder, honestly, that makes more than $5,000 is making more than 90% of the indie titles that sold that month through distribution. That's a lot of crowdfunders.
Yeah.
But people don't like comics anymore. It's the stupidest reason I've ever heard. It's because there's all these problems in the system right now that we're completely ignoring and glossing over and going for the dumb answer of people just don't like comics.
Yeah, that's somebody who's just not trying to find or is unwilling to look at the actual answer.
And at that point, you can get out of the industry at this point. I'm tired of it. If you seriously think no one likes comics, well, what are you doing here? Go
Right.
do something with your life. Go have a nice, happy life. Go work a 9-to-5 job or do something else. Get out of this industry. You're not helping. If that's your mindset, if you truly believe people just don't like comics, that's why no one buys them. Why are you making comics? Why? You should be going, everyone should be reading comics. If they're not, there's only two people in this world, people that love comics and people that don't know they love comics, and that's it. And if you don't believe that, get out of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
People say I'm nice, but you know what? Sometimes I'm not so nice.
But it's true. I mean, if you're in the industry and you're saying that that would be like, that would be like Burger King saying like, yeah, people don't really like hamburgers. Like, what?
Yeah, that's the reason for why the sales are low. People just don't like them anymore. Okay, so people don't like what you're doing and selling anymore. So I guess you should pack it up, because it's only going to get worse from here. That's the craziest reason I've ever heard, ever, from someone who's working in that industry.
That makes no sense to me.
Like, if you were to say that, if a reader was to say it, it's one thing.
Right.
But when someone who works and that your livelihood is making comics, and you're literally saying the reason they don't sell is because people just don't like them and don't want to read them anymore, just go have a nice life. Go get another job, please.
Meanwhile, I've seen so much evidence to the contrary. I've seen so many people who are so excited about comic books now, who either were big into comics when they were young and then they got, they fell out of it for a long while, and then whatever it might be, something got them back into it. Now this new, like you said, the crowdfunders that are doing so well, there's so many of that. Whatever it might be, there's so many people that are so excited about comics again who haven't been for years, or maybe they're new, maybe they didn't ever read comics, but then a lot of the YouTube channels and the crowdfunding and all that got them excited. And now you've got people, I mean, you've literally got people spending, $50 to get one comic on a crowdfunding campaign because they're just excited now. They just want to buy stuff. They want to buy comics.
Yeah, they're excited. They want to support that creator. They want to make sure that creator can make more comics. They're excited for that story. They're excited for what's coming within that particular package. Because a lot of the times, too, it's not just you're getting the comic and it's $50. You're getting all kinds of things that are associated with it. And then if it's a big creator you really are a fan of and have been a fan of for a long time, let's say, you're getting an autographed copy. You're getting all kinds of special items with it, all kind of exclusive. So it's fun. It's a real fun thing, and it's a great way to connect everybody together, and you can all go, hey, we made this happen, we made this possible. Without us, this couldn't have happened. And there's a lot of power behind that kind of a statement, especially if you're not just a reader at that point. You're not just a customer. You're someone who's helping to build something, which is fantastic. And I think we're getting away from that in the mainstream, but in the indie side of it, that's 100% what's fueling everything. Is people who didn't have an outlet before for their frustrations, for the frustrations with the stories or the industry or whatever was going on. And now you've got people that go, this is an outlet. This is a book that's interesting. This is a book that I'd like to see out there.
Right.
This is made by a creator that I'd like to support. And we're seeing tons of people, just even people, sometimes they're up and comers. And all it is just, this looks cool. It sounds good. We're getting back to that point again of it just looks awesome, which is where we should always be when it comes to things like comics. It should just be, does it look good to you? Period. That's it. That's all you should be asking yourself and answering. If it looks good to you, great. If it doesn't look good to you, hopefully something else does. Any other question more than that does not matter.
Right. There's definitely some, I mean, there's been some crowdfunding campaigns that I've seen where like you see the art and it just blows you away, and you're like, wait, this guy's never done a comic before? Like, how is that even possible? This guy's fantastically talented. Look at the art this guy's doing. And part of it is because it's coming from a place of love. This guy's hustling. He's working hard to put out the best thing he can do. You know, I just had last week, I had the guys who were doing Oddity, which is a crowdfunding book. I had them on, and I've seen them promoting that book for months and months and months, and that doesn't even start its campaign until September 1st. And they've just, because they're out there, they want to make a success and they want to do well. And that's the thing, when you see these people putting their heart and soul and their effort into these things. And I saw we had, like some others that I've seen too, like, but I saw we had Sean Campbell is in the chat, and he did Ferryman, and he's got Ferryman 2. I think it's still in demand. And that's another one. Like, this guy has been, I've seen him hustling, I've seen him working to get the word out and to promote that book, and he already delivered one. So now, people know that they can trust him to deliver again. So now, like, the ball just keeps rolling. And when you see people putting out, and what I really love is I see creators promoting, tweeting out and promoting other creators, crowdfunders and stuff like that. And I see a lot of that even with the Alterna guys. Like, it's funny. I see like one guy will tweet something maybe about like, there's one for me personally. I'm very much looking forward to Voidwalker. So anytime I see anything having anything to do with that, because I love Christian, his artwork is incredible.
Christian Rossi's great.
Yeah. And so, like, anytime I see anything with that, I'm always like, what is it? Is it a page? Is it something? Yeah. And, but it's funny because you always see, like, if you look at the list of who else is retweeting that and commenting on it, it's a bunch of the other Alterna creators. Like, everybody, it just feels like this so much better of everybody is backing each other and trying to help each other succeed, because we all love comics.
And that's the thing that's great too right now. That's not that you touched upon, but I don't think many people are really giving it the credit that it needs. And it is, all these people are getting the boot camp of entrepreneurship, of looking at it and going, I'm not just making a comic, I'm starting a small business. So I have to promote, I have to market, I have to get this thing done. So I'm producing, and then I have to also ship it out, all this other stuff that's involved. And everyone's getting acclimated to, even people like yourself, starting up YouTube channels, whether it's to talk about comics, the industry, your own comic, whatever it is. Everyone doing all of these things that 10, 20 years ago, all you did was just, well, I'm going to write a comic. I'm going to draw a comic. I'm going to, get familiar with an editor and then hope they give me a shot. And that was the extent of it. You didn't really go through learning how to promote. You didn't go through learning the business. You didn't go through connecting with the readership. You just made sure that, I just know how to do whatever it is I'm trying to get hired to do. So you're going to get all these people, a flood of people, a wave of all of these creators that know how to market themselves, how to connect with their readers, and how to hustle and bust their butts. And that's what's going to create a rising tide in comics. And that's why, to me, alternative distribution is going to be great, because I'm going to see that and go, you know what? This person here, who's an up-and-comer, their book looks good. We got to get this in. This person here, maybe they need a year or two. We'll get a little bit less of their book. Give it a shot. See how much they promote it. Maybe it sells through completely. Then we'll get some more in. And you keep on doing like that, and you keep on growing, and everybody keeps growing together, and everybody keeps promoting each other. Because the thing is, alternative distribution is different than Alterna Comics. It's not a publishing company.
Right.
So, for instance, Sean that you were talking about, he had submitted Ferryman to Alterna. At the time, it was really early on, and it really wasn't ready just yet. And so I had to talk with him about it and let him know that kind of stuff of what he could do to kind of really get it to a better place, maybe revise it a little bit or whatever. But I told him, at the end of the day, though, I was like, I don't think you'll necessarily even need Alterna. I think you can kind of just do this on your own, because it's not exactly going to fit in with Alterna. But I still think it has a good shot at succeeding and doing well for you. And like, he still reads Alterna, and we still talk a bunch, But it's like that's the kind of thing, though, that if anything, I hope that with other people as well saying things, I hope that was one of the things too that helped him and drove him to succeed with this book. He says he's still bitter about it in all caps. It's okay. Okay, Sean. But when it comes to Alterna distribution, yeah, I want the Ferryman in Alterna distribution. That has nothing to do with anything. It's a completely different thing. I'm not going to look at that and go, oh, it wasn't ready for Alterna. I don't think it'll sell well. No, because 90% of the submissions that I reject, it really is. It's just not going to be a good fit for us. It doesn't mean that it's not a good book or that it might not do well. It just means for Alterna, there's a lot of different things going on. It's always a combination of things. Either you're not ready yet, you're maybe too new, you don't really know necessarily, because it's always a couple of questions too from some people with that it just lights go off. You know, like sometimes I'll get the whole, so you publish comics, right? Within the submission. I'm like, man, you're not ready yet. you're submitting a comic to me and you're not quite sure if we publish comics. Sean, that's great.
I had to put that up. Yeah, that was too funny.
If that helps you out, Sean, go for it. Plaster it all over the place. So it's that kind of thing, though, you know, where some people just need some time and they need to just get acclimated to understanding that I don't have to rush into all of this. I can take the time and get better and grow. And, you know, do what Sean's doing. If he wants to do the equivalent of how do you like them apples to me and plaster it in my face, go for it, buddy. I want to hear that you outsell every single book I publish. You know, do it. Let that drive you. That's amazing. And that's the thing that I want Alterna distribution to have. I want everyone to have a place where they can all come together in this one area and get into stores that we have connections with. We already have stores that are always ordering from us, 50 to 60 stores. So, and we've got a couple that are diehard stores that order a bunch of comics every single month. But we're going to grow with that too, because if you can imagine for a second, 50 to 100 creators getting into Alterna distribution, and we're all used to it. We're all used to hustling and letting people know and getting people involved and getting the community of readers behind us. That's powerful stuff. The successes that we see with crowdfunders, there's no reason on earth that couldn't happen with this kind of distribution system. So we're not going to be, a lot of people say, oh, you should be competing with Diamond, or you should take Diamond down. I've got my problems with Diamond, you know, just like everybody else does.
Right.
But Diamond, if anything, Diamond probably wants to just take care of the top 5 to 10 publishers.
Mm-hmm.
But they find themselves in a position right now of not the prestigious position of being the only distributor, but the really sad and daunting position of being the only distributor.
Right.
It's not helpful for them. If they could brand themselves almost in a way where they're the premier comics distributor and you can get distribution from other sources, Diamond looks like what their name says. But right now it's kind of like, yeah, it's Diamond, you know, they're the only one. Right. So it's like, yeah, you got into Diamond. Well, who the hell else were you going to get into? So right now there's so many indie creators, and that's what I'm so excited about with Alterna distribution. And this is something that everyone goes, well, how are you going to do it? It's basically going to be a port of how we do it right now with alternaaccess.com. It's not going to be anything super complicated. We're not going to have some, you know, Sears catalog of comics that we send out. It's called the internet, which we discovered earlier on is a place where everyone hates each other.
Right.
We're going to have the books on that. And everyone gets to go, hey, this is a place to sell to readers and retailers. And the retailers will get a discount code. So this way it's nice and easy for them. There's no craziness involved. They can order what they want to order. And we're going to have a page on there dedicated to the retailers. And it's going to have their store name and their address and the comics that they're carrying. So this way readers will know I can go find these books here. So when they order certain books, I can put on there, this store has these books in stock. And then when they need more, they can reorder more. And we'll do the same with the creators that we take on. So it's not a question of just taking Diamond system and making it smaller for us. It's
right.
Doing things completely different that need to get done, taking care of reorders, taking care of the crowdfunding type books, taking care of the indie creators that are in Artist Alley that are just like suffering and dying there
right.
with no way to get their books out outside of past that table. When I go to shows, I'll sell Alterna distribution books as well. They'll have their own table set up in boxes, and we can sell them there. And I'll go to other people's tables through the Artist Alley, buy a couple copies for everybody. Hey, can you give me this discount on these books? I want to sell these and distribute them. Even if it's just 10 copies, 20 copies from some creators, those are 10 or 20 copies that's sold, and they're going to get to a store.
Right.
Any other way right now, it's not going to happen. And we grow. And as we grow, we expand. And as we expand, who knows 5 years from now what happens? But I didn't think 2 years ago we'd be doing this. I didn't think we'd get single issues at Toys R Us. I didn't think we'd get single issues at Sheets, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. You never know.
Well, and that's why I always, and I've tweeted this to you a couple of times, and I've mentioned it in other videos and stuff. You got to get in the airports. Every airport in America has that same bookstore. That same bookstore. I can't remember the name of it now for some reason, but they're in like everyone. I just feel like Alterna comics in the airport. What parent would not want to just grab a couple of comics, especially if they're about to go on that, here in the East Coast, it's that 2.5 hour flight down to Florida for Disney World. Who wouldn't want to grab a couple of comics to keep the kids entertained on a flight, or even just in the airport?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that's what the system needs. And at the same time, that's what the system doesn't want anymore. The system is so reliant upon distributors calling the shots. Before, distribution was just you get product from the supplier to the seller, and that was it. It wasn't this kind of let's gatekeep it, let's run it through the system of what do we think it's going to sell, all this kind of stuff. It just turns into, can you get us product? Yes, you can. Let's sell the product and then see how it does. And if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. That's your risk to take on. It isn't anything more than that. It shouldn't be anything more than that. As soon as it becomes more than that, as soon as it becomes a distributor saying, I don't think this book is good enough, you're a publisher now. You're not a distributor. Even with the smaller account, everyone says, well, smaller accounts, they don't bring in as much money. Every account at first is a smaller account. And if all you want to take care of is the big accounts, then never take care of anything smaller than your biggest account, because every account past that is smaller.
Right.
So don't even distribute. You can't follow the logic chain like that. It doesn't make any sense. There's no logic to it. So you either distribute the product and you just let the market decide, or you just come out and admit that you're a publisher. So there's this weird system at play that's preventing comics from getting out there. And the newsstand stuff, someone in the chat had asked, well, what about newsstand distribution for indies and things like that? That's we can't sublease our distribution on newsstand. That has to be through the distributor. If we went and we put out Alterna Presents, and it was like, Jam's title, let's say.
Right.
And he's not publishing with us, again, slippery slope of all of a sudden it turns into this big gigantic mess because Alterna presents that. Well, what do you mean Alterna presents that? He's not signed with us. The deal isn't with us. We're not publishing it, but yet we're plastering our name all over it. That's not right to him. So it's like, if you want a contact to get into newsstand distribution, which again is returnable, so you're taking that risk as a creator, as a publisher, and you could look at that and go, well, it could be great advertising, which is how you should look at newsstand at this point. Or you can go, well, I'm going to really go hard in the paint on this and make sure that we get our books on every newsstand, but it's going to cost a pretty penny.
Right.
So there's all kinds of risks at play. That's why newsstand isn't this guaranteed thing. When you're a big publisher, you should absolutely have something on newsstand. I always encourage, even if you're a small publisher, if you can get at least one title onto newsstand, like if every single publisher right now had what they felt was their best ongoing book, or even a reprint series like an ICYMI that you can just kind of keep on reprinting stories within it. If every publisher did that, you'd have more readers, because you'd have people looking at the newsstand and then seeing this flood of comics. Whereas right now it's pretty much Alterna and a couple other titles on there on the average newsstand. It's easy to get lost. So if every single publisher went, we got to get a book onto newsstand, just one, and consider it an advertising expense, even if all we did was break even, be a much different industry right now. But again, that's not for alternative distribution to do.
Right.
That's for the specific publisher or creator to decide.
I also love the idea that you're saying you can go on the site and see if one of your stores actually has the issue. Like, that's a great idea, because I could imagine, because I know me, like I'd be like, and that's the funny thing, like that's even faster than the, hey, I'm just going to order this online. Like, I see it, I'm going to click on it. You literally see it and you go, oh, the guys are, the guys in my neighborhood have it. Okay, I'm going to jump in the car, shoot over there and grab it. And then the other thing for the stores, that's great, because if I'm coming to the store, maybe I buy something else. Maybe I buy more.
Even if you go in there and they're sold out and you ask them, hey, it said on the site that you guys would have, and they're like, oh yeah, we sold out, we got to get more in. Well, now they also know to get more in, and you're also there still, so you look around and check other stuff out. And even that other part of it too. Let's say we get like I become fast friends with Billy Tucci. Mm-hmm. Let's say we get Billy's stuff and we start distributing on alternative distribution with some of his books. We get Zombie Sama on there. Right. Billy brings in a lot of people. So all of his readers, it's the same mentality with crowdfunding. You get all these people going to a specific site looking for a book. But in this case, it's even more distilled than crowdfunding, because you're not competing with, this crowdfunder for a board game or this crowdfunder for this and that and whatever.
Right.
It's just comics, and they're all getting distributed from one spot, and you can all order them from one spot. So it's almost like a crowdfunder, but the crowdfunder, it's everyone shipping from one source. So if you're a reader and you don't have a local comic shop, let's say, and you go, well, I want to get these shipped to me. I want to pick, oh, Billy's book. Yeah, I found it. And I want to get this one too from whatever X creator and that other creator too. And this one, hey, this one looks similar to this one, because we'll have it sorted by genre too.
Right.
These books are within the same genre of Billy's book that I like. I want to try these other ones. And now all of a sudden you've got customers, you've got readers that you never would have known. And now they're reading your book. And then again, we have everything coupled with the fact that you got creators that bust their butt to get people aware that their books are out and available and where they are. It's a whole system that just, there's nowhere to go but up. It's just, it needs to happen. So that's why we're going to put it through. We're going to start getting books in. I'd say probably around the first quarter, probably around March 2020, I'm going to start curating and getting and offering signups for people who want to submit.
Right.
And then all I'm going to judge by it is we're going to get everybody's book in. I'm not going to turn people away, but it's going to be, do I get 5 copies of your book? Do I get 100 copies of your book? And it's just going to be, okay, let's test it out. And if your 5 copies sell like this, and that one with 100 kind of takes forever, and I thought it would have done a lot better, well, we're getting more of your 5 in there.
Right.
And you're going to fill out on a spreadsheet, how many copies do you have available for us? Because if you just have those 5 and I need more, it doesn't matter, But if you've got 5 that we take on and you tell me, hey, we can give you as many as 500 if you need, just let us know. Now I know I can go back and say, okay, we're sold out. I got to contact them. They got to get books to us. So you work out a whole system. It's pretty standard in terms of discounts, 40% to the retailer. We're probably going to do a system too where it's a consignment or it's we pay you up front. If we do a consignment, you make 50% of the cover price. If we do a pay you up front, you make 40% of the cover price. So it's either you make money right now and you make a little bit less, or you make a little bit more and we wait till they sell. Right. And not even wait till they sell at the retail level, just till they sell. So if the store buys it or a customer buys it, that's when you get your payout. So there's all kinds of easy ways to do this. It doesn't need to be as hard as everybody wants to make it. I know that everyone's going, well, distribution right now it's this big daunting thing. You need a big, massive warehouse. You need, all these kinds of things. And you don't. You just need to start small and grow. That's all.
I can see. It's funny too, because and you guys also have the printing partnership program. Yeah. So now I could see, like, literally, I could see someone almost doing everything through Alterna with the printing
It could be a
partnership program.
one-stop hub. Absolutely.
They can, get their books printed, and then they can get their books distributed all through you guys at one time. Like,
yeah,
you guys are like, it's a lot of stuff that indie creators can take advantage of. And then with the partnership program, like the pricing on that is so like ridiculously like it's unbelievable.
you can put a book at $2.50 if you wanted, and still make like $1 a book through distribution. And you don't have to do a massive print run. 500. It's there's so many ways to make this work out so great for people, and then they get the rest of their copies too, so you can always sell your copies. Even it's not going to be exclusive contracts either, so you can do whatever you want to do. Like Calistini was asking about digital. If a creator wants to sell digitally, they can do whatever they want. There's no exclusivity with the Alterna distribution system. Sell them on your own website if you want. Sign them and put them on eBay and sell them for 10 times what the amount. I don't care, whatever it is you want to do with it. It's complete freedom. This is one other cog in the system of how you sell your book. It's not the end all be all, which is what distribution. It's kind of tricked people into relying on it.
Right.
And from what I found, honestly, we make more money selling direct. We make more money selling direct than we do through traditional distribution, which is a crying shame at this point. And then if we incorporate crowdfunders with the amount of money that we sell direct, we blow it out of the water. We were talking about Earthworm Jim. There's no way on earth that book makes that money through distribution. There's no way.
Oh, yeah, no.
Probably sells 1,500 copies. The graphic novel probably sells 1,500 copies through distribution, especially based off of past sales and things like that in the current market.
Right.
1,500, 2,000 absolute tops. Nothing close to the amount of money that was made on the crowdfunder. And that speaks volumes. And that means that creators, they can't make money on their books. But if you couple your crowdfunding with alternative distribution, with selling direct, with selling at a show, with getting them into stores through distribution, or even on your own, going to a store and saying, hey, would you carry some of these? If you utilize everything you can, you're in a much better position than you are through going through traditional distribution right now. And that's if it's a possibility, because for many it's not.
Right. That's the funny thing. Like, you see, where this whole thing, where it all comes back to people promoting and getting people interested in their stuff to begin with. I see people, like I said, it's when you see the excitement, it's contagious. When you see someone who's excited about a project that they're working on, it's contagious, and it becomes contagious for everyone. And then they start to spread that excitement. And it's so much different from when you see someone who's already, let's say, working at one of the big two, and they put a tweet like, oh yeah, I did a thing.
Very nonchalant, like I feeling cute, draw something today.
Right.
I might delete later.
It's true though. Like, that's like a lot of them. That's the level of promotion that they do for their own work. So if that's what they're willing to do to promote their own work, it shows you how much they really care about it.
Yeah. Everybody needs a little bit of Stan Lee in them when it comes to getting excited about, what they're doing. I know they recently tried with that horrendous J-Team thing.
Oh God.
That video. Oh man.
Again though, that's just that was just forced and awful.
I just was like, I feel really bad for you. I don't know who you are. But just blink once to let us know you're okay. Mickey Mouse afterwards is doing the South Park thing. He's like, ho ho, you think this is it? You think you're a funny guy? Ho ho.
But the funny thing is you looked at that, and that was an attempt to try to build some excitement for these things, and it was awful. And meanwhile, you can have people who have really and I'm assuming, I don't know who that guy was. I'm assuming he was an actor or something.
Let's hope. If I see him on one of those, I was addicted to crack kind of commercials, I'll be like, all right, well, that explains it. He was just kind of one of these, actor portrayal.
But like, it's funny because you see that, and then you just see people going on YouTube or on social media, and they're just like, hey, here's my latest page. I worked really hard on this. This is like, it took me, hours to do this or whatever it might be. And you look at it and you go, that's somebody who cares. That's somebody who's doing something that I want to see. I want to follow this. I want to know more about it.
Yep, absolutely. Someone who's really, really talented, but doesn't really want to push their product, their book, whatever it is going to sell always less than the person who's nowhere near as talented as they are, but won't stop till people read this book. And that person also, it's a trajectory that's only going to go up because they're going to grow as a creator. The other person is very self-satisfied because they're good. They're good where they are. So they're going to just be, they're at the top, but they're just going to do this. They're going to flatline and stay at the top. But meanwhile, that other person is going to keep growing and growing and growing because they're excited about it. They believe in it. They have the passion for it. And if you don't have the passion for it, if comics broke your heart, kid, I understand. But please, for your own health as well, get another line of work.
Yeah,
this isn't the place to hit your start at comics, be miserable like crazy, wishing something better would come along, and it's not gonna. I tell you, it's not gonna. If you're really excited about it, and you're really giving it your all, something better will come along. But you have to be excited about it. If you're just not, oh man. I always view it too as like, if you're not excited about it, why the hell should I be excited about it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if you're trying to sell me something and you're like, I don't know, it's okay.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Could do worse, I guess.
Yeah. Like, it's not gonna kill you if you buy it. Like what? Like, how is that gonna get me to buy something?
Yeah, I know my best pitches at conventions are like, dude, it's $1.50. Come on, I don't got all day, buddy.
I will say, it's funny, like I will say, like when I do reviews of Alterna books, I always at some point still mention the price. I just have to, like, because it is a selling point. But I always do, and I always say to people, like, it's $1, like I happen to have Blood Realm sitting next to me. Like, it's a 3-issue series. It's $1.50 each. You can get the whole series, and it's gonna cost you less than $5.
Yeah.
Like,
the whole series there will cost you less than most single issues.
Like, and that's the thing. Like, and it's not just about the price. If it was a crappy comic,
but the price is low, not because it's cheap or it's inadequate or whatever. It's lower so you can get more of them. That's what it is. It's lower so you can go, hey, this series looks great. Blood Realm looks great. I would have paid $5 for it. You could say that. And then there's another series that you go, hey, the chair, whatever. It looks okay. It looks okay. I'll try it out. It's $1. And that's all it is. That's all it's about. Is about saying the price shouldn't be the first thing you start considering in your mind as to why you will or won't buy a comic, which for many people right now, it really is because there's so many comics. And let's say you want to buy 50 of them. Let's say you go to the store. Because that's the thing too. Everyone says we should have like the most amazing comics right now. Okay, well, that's a problem too. Because if every single comic was the most amazing, best comic ever, oh my God, like that's another problem to have, an embarrassment of riches. Now, where do you start? You don't have the money for all of them. You don't have the time, So you look at all these comics and you go, okay, I want to get 50 of them, let's say. Now you bring it to the register and it's like, okay, well, that's, $250, $300. They'll tell you. What? But if you get them from Alterna and they tell you, okay, like $70, $80, whatever it is. That's like, oh, yeah, this is great. And you can get your 50 comics, which we do sell all the time because we've got that almost all bundle on the site. People order that all the time, or you ordered the subscription. Yeah. That's a lot of comics. And you look at that, the price was like $100 or so, and you get them shipped every single month to you. So it's a totally different mindset than what currently would exist, where a lot of people say, well, if you lower the price, no one's going to buy anything else. They're going to stick to what they get. And that's not going to, no one's going to get anything else. And I'm thinking like, well, why did it work for us then? We don't have titles people have heard about. We don't
Right.
have creators people have heard about in most cases. But yet it's working for us. People look at the Alterna titles and all they have to think about is, does that look good?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. Those books, like you said, they're not selling on name. They're not selling on recognition. They're selling on, does this look like something I want to buy and read?
Yeah. And that's all it should be about. You know, the only commodity that any reader should be worried about spending when it comes to comics and not getting back is their time. That's it. The money part of it shouldn't be, you know, oh boy, you know, do I get $5 on this comic and try it out, or do I eat tonight? Do I pay the electric bill, or do I pick up my pull list? You know, and everyone, you know, that's what stinks too, is everybody's posting pictures lately about abandoned pull lists and things like that. Okay, so
Yeah.
don't leave your shops high and dry. But shops, you guys also have to come up with policies where people will pre-order and pay in advance, either a deposit or in full. We become a society, we're very used to paying for things in advance. You know, especially when you order things online, that is literally paying for something in advance.
Right.
So
Yeah, no,
stores,
I
don't put
agree.
yourself in that position.
Yeah, they've got to come up with a better solution to that. I mean, it's just taking people at their word of, yeah, I'm gonna come, I'll come buy these. Like,
Yeah,
we're past that now. You've
I
got to get, you've got to. I mean, whether it's keeping a credit card on file or having them actually pre-order, literally pre-order and buy. Listen, we talked
and if
about
it doesn't come in, give them a refund.
yeah.
That's all.
I mean, we talked about people, you know, people saying, "Oh, well, everybody went to video games." Well, if that's the case, then they're definitely used to pre-ordering, because people pre-order
Yeah.
video games left and right.
They'll pre-order their movie tickets, which is like, I've never
Yeah.
pre-ordered a movie ticket, but people do that, you know. Or when you get tickets to a sporting event or a concert, you pre-order that. You don't just go, I'm gonna pick it up. Don't worry.
Right.
Don't worry. I'll get this.
Yeah, I'll be there.
It's like, okay, great. We sold 1 million tickets. And they're like, well, how come there's no money? They said they'd come.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Again,
Like
what other business? What other business does that?
there doesn't exist anywhere else. It really doesn't. You know, the days of like, you know, oh, I'm gonna shake your hand and, you know, I'll be back in 3 days.
Or
you know,
2
with the
months.
money. Yeah, I'll be back.
You know.
Yeah, I'll be back with the money for your horse or whatever it is that I'm, you know, like those days are over.
Yeah. And yet, you know, they're alive and well in the comic industry. Because that's the thing, is that the retailers, yes, absolutely, deadbeat customers. That's awful. Tell your customers, tell your shops that you want to drop a book and all that other stuff. But shops, you have to cover your own hide first and foremost. You know, make sure you've got a system in place. Like what Jam was saying, you either got a credit card on file, people are paying up front, something. And some people, they say, well, the customer, you know, a lot of them, they're not going to want to do that. And I'm thinking like, man, what kind of awful customers do you have that literally just want to pre-order a ton of stuff and have you order it all, and they don't want to pay for it until it comes in? They're paying for it anyway. You know, give them a discount. Give me a discount. You know, incentivize it even. Here's a 10% discount if you pay for all your stuff, you know. But there you go. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Here. There's all kinds of ways to do it. Create a reward system. Hell, you can even go back to the creating, get a unique looking card puncher or something. I don't know. And go back to the buy 10 comics, get one free kind of system. Anything that provides value and incentive to your customers to keep coming back. Because if you have customers just view you as a shelf, as a living shelf for stuff, you know what's going to happen? The only thing that matters is whether or not you're cheaper than the next guy. If they have no other value in your store other than getting the product, that's it. There's no value there anymore, because then everybody goes, well, you know, when it comes to trades, when it comes to this or that, whatever, I'm going to go to Amazon. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. When it comes to single issues, I'll go to DCBS. I'll do whatever else. I don't need, I'll wait in a couple months and get them cheaper. I don't need to do any of this. And as soon as you start drilling into that customer's head, that it doesn't really matter anymore. You know, the stories don't matter. Picking up your books doesn't matter. Pre-ordering doesn't matter. Paying doesn't matter.
Right.
The whole industry in comics is like, we're so scared of saying, and that'll be $5.
Right.
We're scared of that. I'll pre-order it for you. Don't worry. It'll be here. It'll be here. Yeah, see you in 2 months. What is that? Stop doing that. Guys, you got to stop doing that. Stores, I know one store, then they're not around anymore, and that's probably why. They had pre-ordered 3 statues for a customer. It was something like a total of $250 in retail.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really upset when that guy just skipped town and didn't come and get those statues. And they were stuck with them. And they were really awful ones that you can't really resell.
Oh, God.
And they were stuck with them. You know, discounting them in the store, putting them on eBay if they could, selling them at a loss eventually. Don't do that. I mean, it's not even a comic. It's you're putting up statues and things like that, and just going on the honor system. And for these stores too, like what's the point? Do I go in there and I say I want to put 2 comics on my pull list, and they're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Or do I go in there and say I want 100 comics on my pull list, and you're putting those every month and you're not getting a cent? This is supposed to be a guaranteed sale essentially for you, and it's turned into a gigantic risk. And all you need is 2 or 3 customers with these, you know, whales-sized pull lists of 50 to 100 issues, and that's it. You're done. You're done. And that should have been a guaranteed sale for you. Take the money in advance. Get payment. It's a pre-order. It's not just this thing where you come in and you go, I want this and this and this and this and this, and you get that in, and then you go, okay, see you in 2 months.
Yeah, you have to either. I mean, honestly, it's to the point where you have to either get the money first, or like put a card on file, so if they don't pick it up, you can charge the card, or literally just stop doing pull lists altogether.
Yeah. It's you got to do something. You got to figure something out, because the whole system of constantly going, well, we expect that customers on the honor system will come through and pay. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? You know, a million and one things happen in the course of someone's life, or heaven forbid the customer passes away or whatever occurs.
Sure.
And there's no way to even reach out to them. There's nothing. They're gone. Now you put yourself in this position where you're stuck. This is how it is. Don't do that. Why would you do that? You have to, when you come up with rules like this, they have to essentially go, well, if every customer we had did this to us, would this be okay? The answer is obviously no. If every single pull list customer didn't pay for their pull list and left us high and dry, that's a no. You can't do that. You can't have a system like that. You got to have something in place. And obviously, yeah, write it out. Put it on a flyer. Have the customer sign off. This is the responsibilities of having a pull list. This is the policy that's in place. There's nothing wrong with that, because then it keeps it cut and dry. Everyone's aware. You know, it's strange. This whole industry is strange. Strange.
That is definitely the apt word when it comes to the comic book industry.
But then it's like, hey, you know, things are going bad because no one reads comics. Just fall on that excuse. That's like the catch-all, I guess.
See, I mean, it's just funny because, you know, there's so much. It seems like a lot of times there's so much, and we've gotten into it here too. There's so much negativity around comics that, you know, sometimes it's like you almost feel like everybody, even the people in the industry, it's almost like they don't even like it themselves. It's like everybody is just, well, this is it. We're heading to the end. Okay, whatever. Like, it's all gonna die. Like, whatever.
Well, it's okay because they'll, you know, get a TV or movie deal or whatever it is they think they're gonna get.
Oh yeah.
Like, that thing is really easy too, right? Like, those are just easy. Well, I made a comic. Of course I'm getting a movie deal.
And no movie deal has ever fallen apart.
Oh, obviously not. They don't just buy out an option property so they can kind of tweak them and steal them.
Right. No, that never happens.
Never. That's never happened. You know, even with the chair, with adapting that to film.
Right.
That was largely self-funded, you know, and we had crowdfunders, and we had a couple of small investors and things like that. We pieced together a budget, and I've got I got money tied up in that film as well.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that's the long term, and that this was an opportunity to do something with it. And it's, you know, whether or not it takes 10 years or 20 years to make, you know, all the money back, that's what it is. And you can get gigantic budgets on films, right? They'll get like $100 million budget or whatever.
Right.
And then they only make like 50 or 60, and
Right.
you're 40 in the hole. If anything, you're more than that in the hole, depending if you went through theaters too, because you had to pay them.
Right.
So you're even
and
more
then
in
the
the
marketing budget and
And
everything else.
Yeah. So you could have a total like, oh man, that's hurting. So there's no guarantees with any of this stuff. Just because you got a deal or an option or whatever, it doesn't mean you're set for life and all of a sudden you can kick your feet up and everything is wine and roses. And I guess, you know, that's kind of the weirdness of the comic industry again, is you'll see people, they'll get these weird, you know, they'll get a movie deal or whatever, and then it turns into like, yep, I'm all set, I'm doing great now, I'm the best there ever was, and I'm fantastic. It's like, okay, first of all, your thing hasn't gotten made yet. They don't even know what it's going to look like or who's going to like it or if it's going to get watched or if it's getting canceled before it even goes past the pilot.
Right.
And you're already like, yeah, I'm set, I'm doing awesome, I'm better than so and so and this and that. What are you talking about? Just keep your head on, do your thing. That's great. That's awesome that you got picked up, that you got option, that they're turning into whatever is going on. But seriously, stay humble a bit. Like, holy smokes, you get people that just all of a sudden they're fantastic, they're the best thing ever, and it's why would you? Why are you behaving in such a way? It's a long way down to the bottom. and you're gonna hit everybody on the way down, you know. And just I don't understand that. Don't believe your own hype.
No,
you know?
Definitely. And it's funny because you see people that do that. They get all into this like the Hollywood thing of, oh, I got optioned, or I'm talking to people about an option, and this, that, and they act like it's this greatest thing in the world. And then you've got other people on the other side who literally don't care about getting optioned. It's not even a thought in their head. They're not worried about a movie deal or a TV deal. They just want to make good comic books. There are people who they love comics, and that's the stories, that's the medium they want to use to tell their stories. They're not worried about, well, I'm going to do this because I wrote it as a screenplay. It really didn't work out. Nobody picked it up. So now I'm going to make it tweak it and make it into a comic book. Maybe it'll get picked up then. I don't know. Like, no, you've got people who are like, no, I love comics. I want to tell comic book stories in comic book form. Period. That's just where I want it to end. I want to make a comic book and tell a story in comic book form, and I want people to read it, and I want people to enjoy it.
Yeah. Simple as that. You know, and everyone that's using comics as a stepping stone to get into other media. Again, get out of comics, please. You know, because that's the thing too, is that what I love is when you get like a celebrity doing a comic and everyone gets excited as if like that means the comic's going to be great. What? When? Can you name one? even you know, Kevin Smith's got his fans and everything too,
right?
And people that are fans of his comic runs and stuff like that. But he didn't go, yeah, I really like making comics, I think I'm going to stop making movies, I'm going to just make comics now.
Right.
No, that was just a part of something he wanted to do, something he got done, and he kept sticking with the thing he wants to do. You know, so it's like, if the thing you want to do is make movies or shows or whatever, do that, and maybe every now and then make a comic. But don't do the thing where you're just, you know, I'm making comics and I'm a comic creator and I'm all this and all that, and then meanwhile, like, your heart's not in it, because we're not at a point right now in the industry where we can have people who don't care anymore.
Right.
Like, we need people who care. So please care, you know, and to say that, to say something like that, it sounds ridiculous, but this is the state of comics right now. It's again, it's strange. It's strange to see that kind of thing, you know, having the right attitude and all the basics and all the cliches and all of that stuff. It sounds like completely new and enlightening material when put to the comic industry. But for anything else, even in life, it's like, yeah, thanks, Dad. Thanks for telling me. You know, it's that kind of course, you know. But for comics, it's like, enlightening. Like, oh man, be nice to customers. People like, it's like in Seinfeld when Elaine's going, people like good writing.
Yeah.
Wow. It's like, it's like, that's the kind of, then people will like your comic. If it's good, they'll like, oh, wow. So if it's a good comic, they'll like it. And this isn't someone going and saying these things in a sarcastic sense. It's like, this is actually hard hitting.
Right. It's a genuine revelation.
It's like, yeah. People like when there's good art, and they're like writing it down, and then the lettering looks like it works. Oh, got to write that down too. Lettering's got the story has to be interesting. Oh, I didn't think about that. Story should be interesting. This is basic stuff, and then again, the business side of it. Oh, the product should be where people go to shop. Product should be where people we should people know comics exist, guys. I mean, that's enough. They know where to find them. What product you're saying here? Product should be where people are. What? Yeah, like every other industry ever. I mean, even can we get the Funko guys to distribute comics?
Yeah, right. Those things are everywhere.
You can't go to like your grandma's house without seeing a Funko Pop. I mean, I can't go to the bathroom at a convention without seeing a Funko Pop on the way. Sometimes inside, depending. They're everywhere. So can we get them to distribute? That would be great. They'd be everywhere. Heck, you know what? That's an idea too. Remember the mini comics that were in Hostess and all that other stuff and cereal and whatever?
Oh yeah.
Why isn't there a mini comic in every Funko Pop that has to do with comics? There you go, industry. Thank you. You're making sales now.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny. I was just talking to somebody the other day about the mini comics that came with the He-Man figures back in the day. Like
classic.
Those things were incredible. Those things were absolutely amazing. And again, like it just goes to show, like back, when I was, listen, I sound like an old man. Back when I was a kid, but like it's the truth. Comics were everywhere when I was a kid. They were in the candy store. I bought an action figure, and hey, look at that. There's a comic book in there.
Comics
like it was
trading cards everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. Like, why is it not still like that? Why, like, it can't be that hard for like.
It's because I think the comic industry has had a long history of having knee-jerk reactions to things, to both positives and negatives. So when something's going great for like a month, all of a sudden the rest of that 5-year plan has now shifted to continuing what was great in that 1 month. So if someone likes that cat in Captain Marvel, we got to do cat variants.
Yep.
We got to make sure that cat's everywhere.
Got no choice.
So if someone likes Harley Quinn's got to be
Lord.
everywhere. If someone likes Wolverine's got to be if someone likes pouches, everyone, you guys are getting pouches. This is comics. It's a knee-jerk thing. And the same thing goes with when there's a negative, when there's a road bump. We had a dip in sales on a certain thing. Cancel the whole thing, reboot it, let's go.
Right.
We, trading cards. Oh man, we didn't sell as many that 1 month that we did before that. Well, no one likes trading cards anymore. That's it. They're gone. It's turned into a gimmick industry. Where's the leadership that goes, no. We've got a bump in the road right now. We're going to stay the course. We're doing something that matters, something that's important, and we'll find our way, and it'll get better. And as long as we stay consistent and true, we'll have people that depend upon us and go, yep, that's the company that even though maybe last month wasn't as great, they're staying, and I can depend on them that they're going to find their way and still be dependable. Because imagine if you go into like a McDonald's. I don't really eat McDonald's anymore, but let's say you go to McDonald's and you want to get a Big Mac, and you get the Big Mac, and it's just mayonnaise instead of secret sauce or whatever, and it's a chicken instead of beef. Like, here's a Big Mac. And you're like, this ain't a Big Mac. This isn't a Big Mac. It's a different sandwich. It might be good, but it's not a Big Mac. It's not what I wanted. And they're like, well, there was one month we had where no one seemed to like Big Macs as much as the previous month. So we decided to reboot our entire line of food. I don't think McDonald's lasts much longer. So again, in comics, we wonder, well, why aren't people, where'd they go? Well, because you guys make it look like comics has no idea what's going on and that the industry is constantly just in the crapper. Every little road bump, reboot the industry, reboot the continuity, reboot the character, retcon this, change that. Where's the consistency? If I'm supposed to believe that these characters are characters I should feel for, because that's the thing, they have to be emotional ties, right? To quote Bruce Lee, we need emotional content, right? So if you don't have that emotional content within that character, if you don't have anything, that believability that this is a real character, someone you can care for, love, hate, whatever it is. If this is just literally a work of fiction and nothing matters, then why am I spending real money on this thing that means nothing to me and won't mean anything next month anyway? That's the worst, and we see this a lot. That's the worst thing you could do, is to tell a reader, these are all made up anyway, right? These aren't real. Again, get out of the industry.
Right.
Get out. Because if you believe that there's of course it's not real. First of all, that's awful to say. That's so stupid. But these things, the emotion in the story, that's real. And that's what people care about. So you don't even understand why people like stories, and yet you're creating stories. It's so baffling. I'm gonna have to find different words for strange. So it's baffling, weird. It's it's puzzling. It's perplexing. So all of those words. I'm gonna get a thesaurus up. Strange. What's different words for that? And so it's all these things, and you sit there and you go, that's supposed to be a real character, a real person. Like, I know this person. Especially the tagline is right, they exist. Then that's like they're in your world.
Right.
Well, if Peter Parker is in my world, well, then he is behaving in a consistent fashion. Unless things happen to him that have altered his life in such a way to make his demeanor change, to make him not the person I knew. And then you still possibly go along on that journey, rooting for him and hoping he can get it back to the place that he was at before, because you love him, you care about him. If you don't get that that's how readers feel about characters, that's how when you watch a film, you root for characters, you root against characters. If you don't get that basic humanity in that story, what the hell are you doing creating stories?
Yeah, it's true. I saw, it's funny because, to put it into something that maybe people who don't read comics, although I think probably everyone who's watching this reads comics, but think about everybody who watched Game of Thrones. Everybody, which is probably everybody and people were so invested in different characters and in what they were doing, and when things would happen, they would have visceral emotional reactions to these things. I myself included, I was caught up in it just like everybody else was. And I remember when everybody on the nights, with the spoilers for Game of Thrones, if anyone out there hasn't watched the series yet, when Jon Snow, when the Night's Watch just stabs him and kills him, I remember literally after that just going, well, I guess I'm rooting for the White Walkers now. Because I was just so pissed. But that's the thing. You become invested in the characters, and you want to see these things through, and you want them to behave in a way that makes sense. And imagine if after
about character development, as opposed to taking that pivot and all of a sudden the character is different because the writer said so.
Right. Imagine if after halfway through let's just say in season 3 of Game of Thrones, they decided, oh yeah, we're just going to start over. Yeah, we're not going to finish where we're at. We're just going to go back to the beginning. We're going to reboot the whole thing. We're going to start from the beginning, and it's just going to be different now. People would have there would have been riots. Like,
yeah.
why? So why is it different with comics?
And again, that's what turns people off from comics too. People think, it's the cliched phrase of, every great jumping on point is also a great jumping off point.
Yeah.
So people think, oh, okay, well, the continuity is what we have to worry about. The continuity is our enemy because no one wants to read through this history to understand it. Well, the thing is, if you know how to write the ongoing story well, and that's the thing too, is I get a lot of questions at Alterna, do more ongoings and things like that. I would love that we could always have an ongoing, but to do an ongoing correctly, you need to have a storytelling style that means that every issue can stand on its own, and that there could be some level of a subplot woven throughout. Because if you can't write a story that way, there's no sense in doing an ongoing, because every single time you're going to battle against your history. But you can also build up a rich history by having this character. It's a day in the life kind of philosophy.
Right.
Of like, here's their day today, here's their day tomorrow. And of course, their day is way more action packed than the average day. Unless, of course, what Liberty Bell was talking about earlier. Then their day kind of seems like the average day of the average 20-something.
Right.
It's like an episode of Friends. Which, again, though, there's a market for that comic. It's just not the comic that it's on.
Right.
So, but so I'd like to see that. I'd like to see an ongoing series become more acclimated to understanding that this should be a self-contained issue. Every issue should be like that. And it's nice and easy to get people on board. And the history works to your advantage, because otherwise, you know what? If your history and your continuity is your enemy, which obviously they've declared it to be in mainstream comics at this point, you're no better at that point than any indie title that's on the shelf. Because if you're just resetting to zero and going, well, you know what? Whatever came before doesn't matter. We're going to do this new take on it. And you're going to still like it though, right? Because it's the character that, that has the name you like. You're actually going to do worse for yourself than the average indie, because someone goes into Blood Realm, Mr. Crypt, Trespasser with a clean slate, no expectations. They go into it thinking, it looks good. Let me see. They don't go into it thinking, I know what this character's like already. I know the history. I know whatever. So your core readership that's on board, that's supposed to be the one driving it, to be your word of mouth, they're going into that going, this don't look like anything I've ever read before. I don't know what this character's doing. I don't know why it's just not a new character that they're making. Why would they even do this? So now it has the backlash effect. So everyone's at a disservice because of it. The retailer, the publisher, the creator, everyone now is behind in starting at a negative. You're not even starting at zero. So again, I don't have any more words. I'm done with the thesaurus for the night. But it's stuff like that leaves everybody scratching their head. And then when it turns into, well, you know what? I don't know what to make of this industry anymore, and people walk away, and stores suffer for it, and everybody else does too. Everyone's wondering, well, why? Well, why? Okay, so if you want to say no one's reading anymore, well, why aren't they reading? Can someone ask why? And I know there's people crashing, and I gotta get going soon too. But that's the type of thing where we got to start asking why and answering that question. No more of this kind of settling on, well, it's a given. People just don't like him anymore. They just don't read him anymore.
All right. So yeah, it's getting late. We've been going for a long time, which is awesome. I really do appreciate it. So let's go real quick one more time. We'll talk about Alternaween. If you guys out there haven't already backed it, it's got 7 days left?
Yeah, 7 days left. Let me put it up on the screen here. Let me see if I can get this going. All right.
Yeah, here, let me make it bigger.
So we got 7 days left. It's at 53.18, which is great. We had 2 backers, I think, from starting the show. So if anybody watching that backed, thank you guys so much. 154 backers on board. We have unlocked the Longbox Strong shirt. And that can also be an add-on perk too at $18. All of the shipping for United States backers is free. And the Alterna Comics calendars are exclusive to the campaign. So right here you can see this is a wraparound cover, back and front. Also, if you're an Alterna subscriber, you get one of these included in your month as well for October.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yep.
That's cool. I was gonna say I love the calendar. Calendar looks awesome.
Yeah. I got 2 more months to put together on it, and then it is good to go. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been great. This was just something to just give to kids as well, and kids love calendars. I mean, they especially when they have fun characters on them, because most calendars are so boring. So I knew I loved them when I was a kid, and then even when I was a substitute teacher, I saw kids they all had their characters with calendars, and they put stickers and they wrote on them and they put their homework down in them. So especially where Alternaween has a focus on using comics as trick or treats, this is something that people are going to get in their bundles as well. And then we've got merchandise here like the beanie, various shirts.
I'm definitely getting the Team Comics shirt, by the way.
Nice, yeah. And we also have the shirt bundle here. I have to add the other shirt too and come up with another tier where you save a little bit if you got both. But then we've got the bundles here. It starts off, you can get 25, either all ages or mixed, and it's $25. And you get the calendar and a couple other things too. And then it gets more affordable the more you get. So then at 50, it goes to $35. And then at 100, well, we got the retailer bundles too. So if you got a shop, you can get 100 of these for $50, essentially 50 cents a piece. And then we've got these, which are not for retailers, for the average person who just wants to give these out for trick-or-treaters, 100 for $70. And then we've got these 200 comics, either all ages or mixed, for $99. So we've got 5. These are actually more popular than I thought they'd be. 5 out of the 10 for all ages have been picked up, and 3 out of the 10 for the mixed. And then last but not least, we got the everything bundle, which it gives you pretty much everything, I think, other than the unlockables and the 4-color beanie here.
Yeah, there's definitely some really good stuff in there. So like if you're watching, if you haven't backed already, it's worth backing for the fun of being able to be the cool house that gives out comics on Halloween.
Yeah. I mean, you will seriously make a kid's Halloween one of the most memorable days of their entire life. And do something fun in the process too with comics. Yeah,
and it'll be more exciting for them to get than a jazz record.
Absolutely. Or a bag of raisins, raisins.
Yes.
Boy, oh boy.
No, it's definitely, I mean, it's a really cool campaign. This is the second year now because the first year went well. So obviously doing it again.
Yeah, and the first year went really well. We got 500 backers on board, close to 17,000 raised, and everyone's wondering, not everyone, a couple people. A couple people wondering, well, why didn't this one get so many more people? Well, the thing is that we had the Alterna expansion campaign a couple months ago that was to kind of supplement for our really quickly expanding growth to the point that we needed a new and bigger storage center, about 4 times the size of our old one. So we had about 250 or so backers on that, and it raised almost 9,000. So a lot of people, I know for a fact, got books during that time because it's the same kind of campaign. And they got books for Halloween, and they've been kind of sitting on them. So a lot of those people did not, at least I know a couple did not back this campaign again because of that specifically. So between this and the other campaign, we're pretty much going to hit where we were last year anyway, which is what I expected. I didn't expect us to hit. And if anything, I'm grateful for it because boy, oh boy, that was exhausting. It was great, but it was exhausting. So I'm glad to see that this one, we're probably going to hit somewhere between, I'd say maybe around 7,000 or so, if I had to guess. by the end of it.
Great.
But yeah, this is wonderful. And then on top of it too, every 1,000 we're raising, we're already donating a box of 100 to a children's hospital. We usually donate to Shriners in Boston.
Okay.
But I'm also going to be donating a box of 100 comics for every 1,000 we raise past the goal. So that's going to be another box of 100 to a children's hospital.
That's awesome.
Yeah, last year was like something like 1,500 comics that got donated to children's hospitals between us donating them and backers requesting that we donate them. And we already had a couple this year, so it's great.
That's really cool. Yeah, no, it's such a cool thing. The whole idea is just a great idea. It's like it's surprising that nobody thought of something like this sooner, honestly, because it's just such a cool idea of giving out comic books on Halloween. And then also just the idea of, hey, we could donate to hospitals and we can donate to schools. We could, there's so many places that would love to have them. Not to mention just the kids coming to the house and being like super excited that they're getting a comic book.
Yeah, and what better, honestly, than a kid sitting there with the comic book and all the candy on Halloween, and they're just having the best time of their little kid life.
That would have, are you kidding me? That would have been like my favorite Halloween ever.
Oh, and then you're bringing in the comic the next day to school, and especially because it's a neighborhood too, so a bunch of kids are going to be hitting up the same kind of house,
right?
And all these kids talking about their comics that they got from that one cool house, which was your house. And then all of a sudden it turns into, hey, comic books. Let's check out, what else they have. And it does exactly, it's going to do this year exactly what it did last year, which is get more kids to read comics, more kids getting excited about comics, and even kids starting to make their own comics. So it's wonderful. The whole thing is great.
That's awesome, because that's what I used to do when I was a kid. I made comics left and right. I was pretty prolific back when I was a kid at making the comics I made. I made tons of them because, I didn't put too much thought into them. I just kind of made them up as I went along. and quite a bunch of them were just, hey, I really like Ninja Turtles, so I'm going to do the same thing, but this time they'll be ferrets,
Yeah. I still remember when I was about 8 or 9, I made a comic called The Crimson Arachnid.
Oh. Okay.
No relation to SpiderMan or nothing.
Yeah, listen, I had my one character. I had Night Stalker. He was Batman. Let's be honest, that's just what he was. I did have some others that were a little more like original, but for the most part, a lot of them are just plays on whatever I was into at the time.
Yeah, and it's great when kids can do that, and it gets them drawing. That's the thing too. There's a lot of really fun books at Alterna, especially Mighty Mascots. I think is a real fun one for kids because it's got a lot of drawable images in it. It reminds me of when I used to look at Jim Lee's art, and it just made me want to draw this stuff. It just looked fun. It just looked fun. And Mighty Mascots, it's a lot of dynamic poses. It's a lot of fun designs on the characters. Kids always they flip out about that every time we do a show, and you get kids reading it. It's great.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a great book. And it really is like, it's funny because, there's that kind of a weird, like sort of a stigma sometimes on something that's called all ages or that looks like it's aimed at kids. But like, not for nothing, but reading issue 1, I thoroughly just fell in love with that book, and the art was fantastic.
Yeah. He's got a lot of really fun stories too planned for the next volume. I've been talking to Keith about the fact that he can tell a million different kind of stories with what he's set up here, and he didn't really think at first that he could. And I was like, no, you could do all kinds of stories. You could even have it could really be a true ongoing series too, if you wanted. It's all about just the time at that point and the budget in place to create it. But he could have every single issue be a new villain of the issue, whatever it is. And then I was like, we could do it the old school way too, of then we'll see how readers respond. And if they've really loved a certain team or a certain villain or whatever it was, you could bring them back, and you're going to find out the more you do this, what characters readers love and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, wow, I didn't really ever think about it that way, that I could do all that. And it's like, yeah, man, the sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned with that book, especially.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. That book is a lot of fun, and it definitely just I was honestly, I knew I had seen some of the art before it came out, and I was looking forward to it, and it looked like a fun book. It sounded like a great idea. The whole cereal mascot idea was just a great idea, and then when I saw the book, I was honestly like really surprised at how good the art was and how dynamic some of the stuff. Like, I was looking at it and I'm like, this looks like, yeah, I know it's cereal mascots and everything, and they're fighting like these like slimy plaque monsters or whatever. But like at the same time, like this is like the kind of poses and action and dynamic stuff that I was used to seeing from like the great comics like back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, Ian Warianto does a tremendous job on the art, and Anton Bandy does a great job on the colors too. It's a lot of fun. It's just fun. You just look at it and you go, man, like this is just engaging. It's engaging art.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's and like I said, I was I thought it would be fun. I thought it would be like, oh, this will be a fun book. It'll be silly. It'll be whatever. But like then I was like genuinely like taken aback when I read it, and I was like, this is great.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, again, it's the kind of thing, is it awesome? Does it look awesome? Because I'm always telling Keith, just make sure it looks great and it's attention grabbing. Whatever character you come up with, whatever plot, make sure that it's always, because that's the thing. Keep it a little bit simple so it's easy to follow and you don't have to get too complicated. You give the characters just enough angst sometimes. Don't make it turn into, Mighty Mascots in Crisis.
Oh God.
and you can have a lot of fun with it, because if anything, I told him like we got Boxer Bear, who's one of the characters in there, and he's got that attitude. He's like a Raphael Wolverine type, at least old school Wolverine, where he was always like, leave me alone, I'm gonna cut your head off. Right. Talk to me another second, kind of a thing. But he still has a heart of gold, right? So he's misunderstood all the time, which furthers his angst. So it's like you could always have issues like that too, where there's a misunderstanding that takes place, and maybe like they don't want to work together because they're kind of fighting right now.
Right.
But then the villain really gets the upper hand because they're not fighting together as a team. And it makes that character realize, man, I'm being selfish right now. I'm putting my team in jeopardy because I'm just letting this whole thing just get the better of me. I'm like, you can have all these parts, and if anything, kids love that and adults love that stuff too. It's what made like the X-Men. It's what made the X-Men great.
Oh yeah.
It's those clashing personalities, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of love there. It's like a family.
Right.
There's a lot of love there for each other and a lot of respect. And you realize, like, man, I'm being an idiot right now. I'm being a jerk. You can have these kinds of characters and they're serial mascots, but they're taking on a life of their own, and treat them more as characters than as a gimmick. So this first series is really establishing all the characters, their kinds of personalities, and the adventures they're going to continue to have. So I was like, the next one, we could really get a lot of things going here, and you can have little stuff like that. And you can create interesting stories that further characters, relationships that they have, and establish villains and other things like that as well.
It's definitely, I would say it's definitely one of those books that you look at and it just, it screams out, at least to me when I see it, it screams out like franchise. This could turn into something huge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I felt the same way actually about Psycho KO too. I always thought like that just, I mean, as soon as you see the art style and you're like, okay, I know what this is. Okay. and okay, this could absolutely be a cartoon tomorrow and people would be watching it.
And I think we're getting to a point too. I kind of like some stuff that's a little ironic, but when we get, again, comics loves that, right? The one thing takes off, it's ironic because it looks like it should be a comic for kids, but it's filthy and it shouldn't be.
Right.
And it's like, hey, let's make like 75 comics that are like that. Because comics is loaded with people who are trend followers and only a few that are trendsetters. And everyone ends up going, follow the trend. And then what happens with the trend is you go, well, we got to get on it now. So we got to make sure that it gets out there. So take the shortcuts, rush it, let's go.
Right.
Get the book out in time because we got to follow on that trend because that's what's hot right now. Well, the thing is that a good story is always hot. You don't have to ever worry about following a trend when it's a good story. So if comics were more along that path of the long term as opposed to the short term of always chasing a trend, we'd have a much healthier industry. And we'd have also readers who wouldn't get so sick and tired of certain things and getting overexposed and overloaded and told that, hey, this is the thing that's hot right now. Comics is not fashion, it's storytelling.
Right.
We have to understand it's a completely different vehicle.
I remember, it's funny because I remember, and I'll let you go soon. I remember back in at some point in the 90s, I was looking through like a previews, and so many of the descriptions described literally word for word would say grim and gritty for the 90s. Like it was literally in like every description.
Yeah, it's extreme.
And I remember it cracking me up. And even then, like as a teenager, I remember thinking to myself, like, somebody should make a comic just called Grim and Gritty. Like, like they should just make a Grim and Gritty comic where like the one guy's like a Wolverine ripoff, the other guy's like a Punisher ripoff, and like just do something with that. I don't know.
Like, yeah, you can have Extreme Team, and it's like the Human Pouch with shoulder pads, and his sidekick Big Gun. You could literally do a spoof.
Even back then, it was just trends, everything. This is what's hot, so this is what we're gonna do. Grim and Gritty's hot. We're doing Grim and Gritty, guys.
Yeah. And those characters initially too, they're great, they're interesting, and then everybody starts copying them, and they become not so interesting anymore. And then you give it the next generation, and they rediscover it, and by that time things have watered down, and those characters that have so much personality, now they're special again because they have personality. But that's the thing, comics, like, stop it with every knee-jerk reaction to things. Have a little bit of backbone with where you want to creatively take your stories, and understand the reason that character is hot right now is because people like that character. It doesn't mean they want that character to now look like every other character as well, and become that character. For an industry that we want to rally against, the comics, and they need to be more diverse. It's interesting. Comics is we do have a history of, in a way, of not necessarily wanting diversity, but not the way you would think.
Right.
It's like, well, of course they all have to be this way because that one sold really well, so we have to release 100 more. No, that one is special. Leave that one be. And that's what makes them great, is that then they can play off of the other personalities that are there. It's like, I can't get into the I don't know if it even counts anymore, but that the new Batman, Superman movies and whatever.
Right.
I'm like, okay, so Superman's really dark now, so he's not Superman anymore. So Batman's just like gonna kill everybody he sees. Is that how he's gonna get darker? Because as soon as Superman's throwing trucks into things, and it's not Superman.
And then at that point, if Batman's killing everyone, he's the Punisher.
Yeah.
He's not Batman.
Yeah. So it's just like, again, it's just everyone follows suit because it's like, Batman's popular, we got to make sure they're all kind of dark like Batman, and they're all brooding like him. It's like, but that's what makes Batman special. And that's what makes it great when he interacts with Superman, who's not that way.
Right.
And that's what makes their understanding and the respect they have for each other, and that tension at times too, so interesting. Again, you don't even understand how you're telling a story and why people are interested in the story to begin with, and yet you are telling a story.
Right.
Why are you telling a story?
I remember years ago reading, like, I was never a giant like Punisher fan. Like, I liked it, like he was fine, whatever. But I would buy a few issues here and there, but I didn't read him religiously or anything like that. But I was a giant SpiderMan fan, and I always felt I liked the Punisher most when he was guest starring with SpiderMan.
Oh yeah, certain characters are wonderful when they're guest stars. Yeah,
like he was so great. I've always felt like, because it always puts Spidey in this ridiculous position of, we've got to fight the bad guys, and at the same time I have to stop the guy I'm fighting the bad guys with from killing the bad guys all at the same time.
Yeah, it was always great, those issues. Oh man, yeah. Nothing. There's nothing like even with Wolverine too. You know, there's that one McFarlane storyline, and I think then we're going to end it on a high note. And I love that storyline, even though it was dark and everything. I was still a kid. I loved it, and it was that whole thing of, man, like Spidey's thinking like Wolverine's nuts. Like this guy is crazy. He's just ready to kill everyone, you know? And they're kind of going at it, like not understanding, you know, philosophically where each other's coming from.
Right.
Wolverine thinks like Spider-Man's a putz and that he's a complete, you know, he just doesn't even know what he's talking about, you know? He hasn't seen the world. He doesn't know how people really are. He's too optimistic, all this kind of stuff. And then Spidey's thinking, man, like Wolverine is just not crazy, just absolutely nuts. And then by the end of that storyline, what they go through, they have this understanding of you know, Wolverine looking at Spider-Man like, wow, you know, it takes a lot of strength to have your character and to be the way you are, to not give in. And Spider-Man understanding what Wolverine's been through and his side of it, and understanding that he's not brutal because he's crazy. He's brutal because he's trying to save people, and he's trying his damnedest to hold back that rage that he has, because he could constantly go over and just kill everyone. And for them to just go at it and go, wow, you know, it's both of them juggling that responsibility and that power, because there's nothing commendable about having a great amount of power and no responsibility behind it.
Right.
It takes a lot to go, man, I could do a lot of damage right now. I could do a lot of bad, but at what cost? And then what does that make me? Because that's where you get a villain. A villain has great power and no responsibility.
Right.
But yeah, I love that storyline. I thought it was great. And yeah, even though it was darker at the time for Spider-Man, I thought that the way their characters played off of each other, I thought it was wonderful.
And that was a great story. Like anytime, I always felt like anytime Spidey played off someone like that, it made for good storytelling.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
again, the character development takes place. They learn from each other,
right,
and they go on.
So, all right. So I really will let you go this time. Thank you so much for coming on and spending a lot of time with us. That was really cool. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, and everybody in the chat as well. I know it's getting late. Boy, it's over an hour past what I thought I would have been here for. But there's a lot to talk about. And you could talk and I can talk. So
yeah,
that's a bad combo.
All right. Thank you again, Peter. I really appreciate it. And anybody out there, Alterna, the link should be in the description. Make sure to back
this way, that way. Yeah, there we go. Alterna 2, Newsprint's Revenge. 7 days left. 7 should look like 7 either way. I can't get used to the reverse camera thing. But thank you guys if you've already backed, which I know many of you have. Thank you guys for all the support, and I'm really looking forward again to this year's event. It's going to be great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll take you up on that eventually. Okay. Thanks a lot. Have a good night, Peter. Have a good night. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking around. Everybody who stuck it out. This was a long one, my longest stream ever. And I really do appreciate it. So again, if you want to back Alterna 2, the link should be in the description. If you want to follow my fanzine, if you want to subscribe to my fanzine, if you missed it, I talked about it 3.5 hours ago at the beginning of the stream. I'm doing a fanzine dedicated to indie and crowdfunded comics. It's going to be called Indie Comics Underground. And if you want to hit the link, it's in the description. You can sign up and have it delivered to your mailbox before it goes on the website. All right, so that's it. I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much for sticking around, and thanks again to Peter, and peace out.